Chapter 600. Uncle. That's my name. My cousin gave it to me. Why can't I use it? The little boy was so anxious that his face turned red. He jumped 30 feet high and protested strongly with his voice that had yet to change. You're just a kid. It's good enough that you have such a cool name. This slogan should be left to the Dongfang family. Jump again, and I'll cancel your name. Only the first in the family competition can be called Dongfang Invincible. Dongfang Wenqing threatened him directly. The little boy was stunned. All right, what's the fuss? Hurry up and go in. Third brother's house, have you cleaned up the guest room I asked you to? I want the best. Come, let's go to the main hall and drink some tea to moisten our throats. My grandson has traveled thousands of miles and must have had a hard time. Now that we're here, we're going home. Let's rest first. The old lady of Dongfang held Mei Shuiyan's hand affectionately and held Jun Moxie's arm with her left hand. She was so happy that she walked quickly. Just as he reached the entrance of the hall, Jun and Mo Xia jumped in fright. There was a large group of women standing in front of the entrance. Surprisingly, there were more than 100 of them waiting. Come, Mo Xia, I'll introduce you. The old lady was obviously unhappy. She pointed at the largest group and said, these are all your uncles, family members. This is your second aunt, this is your third aunt, this is your 17th aunt, and this is your 59th aunt. That's not a lot, right? Jun Moxie was shocked. He stood there in a daze. His mouth was wide open and he couldn't close it. Awesome. Too awesome. When he first heard about it, it was just a number. After all, seeing is believing. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he was shocked. His uncle was too powerful. 59th. The most amazing thing was that the 59th aunt seemed to be only 1 or 2 years older than him. She definitely didn't use some kind of technique to maintain her youthful looks. Her young face was definitely not something that could be faked. After greeting them one by one, Jun Moxie felt that his legs were aching, his waist was sore, and even his neck was aching. Although he didn't need to kowtow, just nodding his head was a strenuous job. He turned around in astonishment and looked at Dongfang Wenqing with admiration. First uncle, Mo Xia is truly convinced by you today. You're really made of iron. Dongfang Wenqing's originally dignified face immediately turned red. Dongfang Wenjian and Dongfang Wendao, who were standing behind him, let out a hot sound and started to laugh in schadenfreude. Second brother, what are you laughing at? The old lady was furious. Come, Mo Xia, come here. These are your second uncle's family members. This is your second aunt, this is your third aunt. This is your third aunt. This is your third aunt. Jun and Mo Xia's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. First uncle had 59 wives, and second uncle had 36. Oh God, oh Earth, oh my God. I thought I already have a lot of female friends. I didn't expect that compared to my 2 uncles, it's like comparing a fluorescent light to the bright moon. Comparing a mustard seed to a mountain, I can only look up to the mountain. It seems that I need to continue working hard. Even if the quantity is not enough, the quality must not be relaxed. These are your third uncle's family. Less. The old lady's face looked better, only 3. On the other hand, the most hard-working one has given me 3 grandsons and 2 granddaughters. Unlike the eldest and the second, each of them has a bunch of men, but they can't even give birth to a single egg. What a disappointment, useless things. Jun Moxie finally understood where the old lady's resentment came from. It turned out that first uncle and second uncle did not have any children. No wonder not only the old lady was angry, even their wives and concubines looked resentful. They looked at Dongfang and little Huai with envy. When they looked at the 2 again, they had already lowered their heads in shame. After exchanging greetings for a long time, the gifts the 2 received had piled up into a small hill. Finally, everyone left. Even Dongfang and little Huai were forcibly dragged away. Only the old lady and the 3 uncles were left in the room. Jun Moxie heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly asked, "Old lady, my mother, her current situation. At the mention of this matter, the expressions of the old lady, Dongfang Wenqing and little Huai became gloomy. They did not speak for a long time. After a long time, the old lady finally sat down slowly. Her expression was very painful. She slowly said, "I have been trying to change the topic. It's because I don't want to talk to you about this matter for the time being. Although I know that you will ask about it sooner or later, to this old lady. I will delay it as long as I can." June Moxie's heart sank. Could it be that mother has already? If you come now, you can still see your mother for the last time. The old lady turned her head sadly. A drop of tears fell to the ground. She forced herself to calm down and said, "Actually, it doesn't make much difference whether she sees or not. Anyway, she can't hear or see anymore. She can't even feel anything. She already doesn't care about anything. She doesn't even care about her son, and she doesn't even want me anymore. This unfilial daughter." The old lady finally choked with sobs. The three Dongfang Wenqing and little Huai lowered their heads sadly. "All these years, we have tried everything. We invited countless famous doctors and searched for countless elixirs, just to wake her up. That year, the world's #1 divine doctor, Xian Huichun, came to see her and said, 'This is a heart disease. She has already shut the door to her heart. As long as she doesn't want to wake up, she can sleep like this until the end of time.'" The old lady suddenly turned her head. Her eyes were full of tears, and her expression was agitated. She shouted in a stern voice, "But she didn't think about what I, her mother, would do if she were to lie lifelessly like this. My heart is rolling on a mountain of knives every day. Every night, it's being fried in a pot of oil. Her 2 sons have died with hatred. Her only son is still young, and she doesn't care about him. She doesn't fulfill her filial duties in front of her in-laws. Her birth mother, her own flesh and blood, is worried every moment. Could it be? Could it be that the sky has collapsed without Jun Wuhui in this world? Why can't she be a little stronger? Why can't she work harder?" The old lady was already speechless by the end of her speech. But she still continued in a hoarse voice, "In order to take revenge, our Dongfang family fought against the whole world. We slaughtered our way across the continent. We fought wave after wave. Tens of thousands of lives were lost under our swords. As the saying goes, to kill 1,000 enemies, we have to sacrifice 800 of our own. And our children died one by one. Many of our good sons never came back. Some of their corpses were left in the wilderness. Some of their corpses didn't even remain. Even 2 of my late husband's brothers perished together with the 6 Shenxians of the Shao family. Wasn't this a form of kinship? Weren't these the feelings of kinship? Isn't this endless amount of blood in her heart, can't it be compared to Jun Wuhui?" The old lady's voice was fierce. But her tears were falling along with her sonorous words. Her tears were falling like rain. But this stubborn girl. She actually chose such a path of no return. She made countless people's efforts and sacrifices become meaningless. The old lady was sobbing uncontrollably. "Anne. Day and night, she has been torturing these old bones of mine. One Xin. You can question your own feelings, but why don't you ask your own filial piety? You are so cruel. One Xin. Perhaps, in mother's heart, father was her entire sky. He was her everything. When father was gone, the sky would collapse, and everything would disappear." Jun Imosie's voice was hoarse as he said, "Love is so deep, it's meant to be together in life and death, inseparable in yin and yang. Grandma, you are also a woman. You should understand this kind of feeling. It's because I understand. I'm the one who feels terrible." The old lady was furious. Her tears flowed freely. What's the use of her lying there like this? I I wanted to stab her with my sword countless times. I wanted to release her from this endless sea of suffering. I wanted to fulfill her wish to be with me in the underworld. But I. She is my daughter, my biological daughter. She was raised by me from a young age. I held her in my hands and feared that she would fall. I held her in my mouth and feared that she would melt. She is my heart, my liver. How could I do it? How could I do it? Just thinking about it made his heart ache so much that it could overturn the seas and rivers. But, if I don't do it, when will she be able to endure? When will it end? Everyone was silent. Dongfang Wenqing and the other two people lowered their heads. Their eyes were red and glistening with tears. Fortunately, the Linglong treasure tree that has been supporting her life has exhausted all its vitality. It's starting to wither. She should go. Now that you're here, you can finally see her one last time, and send her on her last journey. It's like, there's a descendant to send her on her last journey. The old mistress fell to the ground weakly. Her eyes were lifeless, and her white hair was disheveled. Suddenly, it was as if all the energy in her body had disappeared. It was as if her life force had been released along with that furious roar. Mother. You know my sister's character very well. She's always so passionate and focused. You know it better than anyone else. Why do you have to do this? Dongfang Wendao wiped his tears and said, to love only one person in life and death. Mother, my sister's character is very similar to yours. When father died early, didn't you also want to leave us 4 siblings behind? At that time, little sister was only 3 years old. We stayed with you day and night. We were afraid that you would suddenly leave us behind. But even so, you still tried to commit suicide a few times. We were all scared out of our wits. The old lady let out a long sigh. She seemed to have recalled something. A gentle smile slowly appeared on her aged face. She muttered, this is different. Your father was a heroic man. He was unrivaled in his martial prowess. He was the #1 man in the world. That Jun Wu Hui, how could he be compared to your father? Chapter 601. Sigh. Do the women of our Dongfang family have to bear such a tragic fate? The old lady of Dongfang looked up to the sky and sighed. Her expression was mournful. Don't give birth to a daughter in the royal family, and don't marry a hero. It's too hard to marry a hero. It's too tiring. It's too sad. The 3 of you must remember, the daughters of the Dongfang family must be the wives of ordinary people, and not the wives of a hero. I'd rather them marry into an ordinary family, where the man plows and the woman weaves, and the husband sings and the wife follows, supporting each other until their hair turns white and living an ordinary life. I don't want them to experience such a passionate love. Because if such a thing happens, it's often the loss of thousands of lives, and the destruction of the entire family. At the very least, the whole family will be in a miserable state, and will never be able to get rid of it for the rest of their lives. That being said, which woman in the world doesn't want to marry an indomitable hero? Who doesn't want their man to have unparalleled achievements, and be admired by thousands of people? An ordinary person and a hero like Jun Wu Hui, if placed in front of a woman, who would she choose? He believed that the majority of good women would rather follow a hero and suffer for the rest of their lives than choose to grow old with an ordinary man. How could a beauty whose beauty could cause the downfall of a city be willing to marry a villager? She would rather not marry, and live alone for the rest of her life, than go against her heart. Just like Mei Shuyan, if she hadn't met Jun Moxie, she would have quietly passed away in the mountains after many years, and would have turned into a wisp of lonely wind, and would have never randomly found a man to marry. Since ancient times, beauties often had unlucky fates, and this was precisely the reason. The hall became silent, and after an unknown amount of time, the old lady finally waved her hand, and said in a tone of despair, the 3 of you, take Mo Xia to see his mother. I won't go. Then, she silently sat on the chair, lowered her head, and didn't move, only a puddle of water could be seen on the ground, and it was getting bigger and bigger. That was the tears of a loving mother. Everyone quietly retreated, but the old woman remained motionless, like a wooden statue. June Moxie and Mei Shuiyan could still hear the sound of the old lady's tears falling on the floor even after they had walked far away. Every single drop came from his heart. The joys and sorrows of their children will always be in a mother's heart. A mother's heart will always be throbbing with the misfortune of her children, and the throbbing pain. Even if they have grown up, even if they have a family, even if they have children, it is still the same. How many of us have unknowingly made our own mothers sad? May all the mothers in the world no longer be sad. They would not be sad. In front of him was a quiet courtyard. The walls surrounding this small courtyard were much taller and thicker than the other places. Outside, the ground was covered in snow, and it was a vast expanse of greenery. In fact, there wasn't even a patch of snow on the ground. It was clean. There were also 7 or 8 plum blossoms blooming in the cold. As soon as they walked in, they felt a sense of warmth. You see, for the past 10 years, no matter how heavy the snow was, as long as it entered this courtyard, it would melt. Dongfang Wenqing's voice was not boasting, but rather solemn. That year, little sister was bedridden and in a deep slumber. Mother used up all of the family's wealth and didn't hesitate to collect small pieces of warm jade from all over the continent. She buried them in this courtyard. I don't know how many she bought, and how many she buried. In any case, as long as she had it, she buried it. In just a short half a year, the Dongfang family's pockets were completely empty. But mother still refused to give up, because she knew that little sister liked the kind of life where hundreds of flowers bloomed and green flowers bloomed. She said little sister would recover faster in such an environment. June Moxie was taken aback. He finally understood why the once illustrious Dongfang family was now living in such dire straits. His heart couldn't help but surge with huge waves. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning in his chest, and his nose seemed to be blocked by something. His heart was so sour that he wanted to cry. Warm jade, those were all priceless treasures. As long as one wore a piece the size of a finger, one could wear it in the cold winter, and it wouldn't affect one's health at all. However, the things that the Dongfang family had bought with such a high price were all buried in this courtyard. It was all for the sake of letting his unconscious daughter sleep more comfortably, although they knew that she might not be able to feel it. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a quiet small building. The ground was spotless, and the surroundings were quiet. Walking into this place was like walking into a painting, or walking into a dream. 2 maids dressed in white appeared silently and saluted them. Dongfang Wenqing waved her hand and said, "No need to be so polite. This is the young master and young mistress of the young lady's family. They are here to visit the young lady. You don't need to serve here anymore. You can leave now." The 2 maids' bodies shook at the same time. They raised their heads and looked at June Moxie. Their eyes were filled with surprise. Tears of excitement suddenly rolled down their cheeks. They sobbed and said, the young lady's son has finally come to see her. I hope she will be happy." They looked at June Moxie with teary eyes for a while, and then they left reluctantly. "These 2 people were your mother's personal maids. After your mother returned, the 2 of them have been serving her for a whole 10 years. Dongfang Wenqing said in a soft voice. June Moxie's expression changed. He looked at the backs of the 2 maids gratefully and said softly, "Thank you." The 2 maids' bodies trembled, but they didn't look back. They lowered their heads and quickly walked out. 2 lines of tears fell on the ground as they passed by. Dongfang Wenqian and Dongfang Wendao had been extremely cautious ever since they had stepped into the courtyard. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Even the 3rd master Dongfang, who had always been rough and loud, had been extremely cautious in his movements. It was as if he was afraid of alerting someone. June Xia looked around and saw that the interior of the small building was elegantly decorated. Although there weren't many things, there wasn't the slightest bit of emptiness or disorder. Every place was neatly tidied up, and every arrangement was ingenious. A living dead person who had been asleep for 10 years lived here, but there was not the slightest smell in the air. Instead, there was a faint floral fragrance in the air. Jun Moxie sighed in his heart. Together with Mei Shuiyan, he followed Dongfang Wenqing up the stairs quietly. Dongfang Wenjian and Dongfang Wendao were excited. They didn't dare to go up, afraid that they would disturb their little sister. So, they stayed downstairs. When they walked to the front of the bedroom, they felt a warm air blowing on their faces. Dongfang Wenqing sighed and said, "The biggest and most complete piece of warm jade was made into little sister's bed." Jun Moxie was shocked. Dongfang Wenqing opened the bedroom door gently and said in a low voice, "Little sister is inside this house." Sigh, she said and let out a long sigh. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan looked up and couldn't help but feel shocked. The two of them knew that this was Jun Mo Xie's mother's bedroom. But when they looked around, they could only see that there was a bed on the south side facing the sun. But, they couldn't tell that this was a bedroom. A woman was lying quietly on the bed. Her body was lightly covered with a layer of quilt. From here, they couldn't see her face clearly, but she was sleeping peacefully. On her chest, there was a small green tree that looked like it was carved out of jade. It was glowing slowly. It was nourishing Dongfang Wenxian's body, but the branches and leaves had already withered and curled. On the surrounding walls, there were pictures hanging neatly. Jun Moxie only glanced at them, and suddenly his heart was shocked. Then, he burst into tears. Jun Wuhui. They were all pictures of his father, Jun Wuhui. Jun Wuhui in his military uniform, Jun Wuhui who dominated the battlefield, Jun Wuhui riding on a horse, Jun Wuhui in casual clothes, Jun Wuhui in white with a sword, Jun Wuhui smiling, Jun Wuhui frowning, Jun Wuhui angry, Jun Wuhui deep in love. Jun Wuhui in his youth, Jun Wuhui in his middle age. Every picture was exquisite and vivid. Every picture was vivid and lifelike. Every picture seemed to be made with all his heart and soul. It was as if there were countless Jun Wuhui standing, sitting, or walking around in the room, accompanying their loved ones. From these pictures, one could completely see, feel, and even experience the legendary life of Jun Wuhui, and even Jun Wuhui's character. There was absolutely nothing left out. The eyes in each painting were fixated on only one place, that small bed, and the person on that small bed. It was as if they could not get enough of looking at it for all eternity. It was as if these gazes had pierced through the netherworld, pierced through the yellow springs, and were fixated on this place, unwavering for all eternity. When little sister came back, she could still move. She supported her body and did not sleep or rest for 3 days and 3 nights. She drew these pictures one by one. No one could persuade her. During that time, she was very crazy. But her expression was very calm. Every time she finished a picture, she would look at it for a while, cry, laugh, and then choose a place to hang it up, and then continue painting. At that time, everyone thought that she had painted enough and would stop painting. Who knew that after little sister finished her last picture, it was as if she had no strength left. Everyone stayed by her side, watching her, but her eyes did not look at anyone. She only stared blankly at the void, and then she just stared blankly at it. It was as if Jun Wuhui was just standing there, until Dongfang Wenqing's voice was choked with sobs. Until that night, she suddenly spoke. Everyone was overjoyed. But after she recited those few lines of poetry, she slowly closed her eyes and never opened them again. It has been 10 years now. A whole 10 years. Jun Moxie's eyes were blurred with tears. He saw a piece of calligraphy hanging on top of Dongfang Wenqing's head. This was the only place in the whole room that did not have a portrait hanging. No regrets in this life, no regrets in this life. Since the ruler has no regrets, your concubine also has no regrets. Where is Wenqing? No regrets in the end, no regrets in heaven and earth, no regrets in life or death. The person on the bed, Jun Wuhui's wife, Jun Moxie's mother, Dongfang Wenqing, was sleeping peacefully. There was still a hint of tranquility and gentleness at the corner of her mouth, and there seemed to be a blissful smile. In her dreams, Jun Wuhui, the person she loved deeply, was always accompanying her, watching her. he was still talking to her face to face, and was still looking at her. In her dreams, they would grow old together, with me and with you. Where is Wenxin? No regrets in the end. No regrets, Wenxin, no regrets. Although it was gone forever in reality, in her dreams, it could go on until the end of time, until the end of time, until the end of the world. Therefore, although she often slept without waking up, she was very happy, and very blissful. Therefore, she did not want to wake up, even if she died. Because once she woke up, it would be gone. It was enough to lose him once. Regaining him after losing him was already a great fortune. If she lost him again, how could she bear it? Therefore, she did not want to wake up no matter what. The door of her heart was tightly shut. June Moxie suddenly felt that he had never been so weak in his life. He swayed his body twice, and suddenly sat down on the ground weakly. His tears flowed out like a fountain. He held his head with both hands, and only felt that it was a mess. His mind and heart were filled with this earth-shattering love. What is love? At this moment it was vividly displayed on Dongfang Wenxin, who was lying quietly on the bed. Love is not changing until death. Love is not changing until death. Love is not giving up on yin and yang. Love is to have no complaints or regrets. Love is love. In this world, there is nothing else that can replace one's love. In place of his lover. For all eternity, for all eternity. Perhaps, in the dream, this love was still continuing for all eternity, where the flowers were beautiful and the moon was round, where the deep feelings were deeply attached, where the earth grew old, the sea dried up, and the rocks crumbled. Women, the most sincere feelings in a lifetime are only given to one person. This was especially true for these peerless beauties who could topple nations. These peerless beauties, they were frighteningly persistent. But this kind of feeling, is true love, is forever. Perhaps to other relatives, this was indeed quite cruel and selfish, but to Dongfang Wenxin, she could no longer care about it. It was not that she didn't care about her mother, her son, or her family, it was because her heart was empty, it was already dead, it could no longer hold anything else. She could no longer think. With tears in her eyes, Dongfang Wenxin left quietly. Mei Shuiyan's tears streamed down her face. She leaned on June Moxie's shoulder and cried silently. In the face of such love, in the face of such true feelings, who wouldn't be moved? Especially since the two of them were originally affectionate people who loved each other deeply. Mei Shuiyan suddenly had a clear feeling. If the person in the portrait was June Moxie, then the person lying on the bed right now would be her, Mei Shuiyan. This kind of ecstatic feeling made her sad from the bottom of her heart, and she could no longer be as elegant as before. June Wuhui, Dongfang Wenxin, a peerless hero, and a peerless beauty. The presence of June Moxie and Mei Shuiyan did not affect the atmosphere in the room at all. Dongfang Wenxin was still smiling calmly, peacefully lying on the bed peacefully. June Wuhui in the portrait was still looking at his beloved wife affectionately, unwavering, determined, and persistent. Different portraits, different gazes. It was as if he was worried about Dongfang Wenxin lying on the bed, as if he was smiling indulgently at his wife's mischievousness, as if he was angry at Wenxin's disobedience, as if he was smiling gently at his wife's sweet sleeping posture. All the gazes were filled with tenderness and love. Although June Wuhui's body was no longer there, his feelings were still so intense and passionate, filling this space and this heaven and earth. Dongfang Wenxian's body was still there, but her heart was no longer there. Her feelings had also left her body and were floating in mid-air, in this void. She and June Wuhui were in love, deeply attached to each other, husband and wife, indulging in each other's desires. June Moxie stayed quietly, feeling the undying love between his parents, and suddenly felt very lost. What should I do? What should I do? How should I choose? How can I choose? With the vast spiritual energy in the Hongjun Pagoda, June Moxie was 100% sure that he could wake up Dongfang Wenxin. But, so what if he woke up? What if he woke up? June Wuhui was already gone. How could Dongfang Wenxin live alone? Instead, in the dream, they could stay together until the end of time. Which plan was better for his mother? Before she fainted, her 3 sons were still alive, and when she woke up, she was told that 2 of her 3 sons had died. Her husband died, and her sons lost. How could she bear it when she woke up? Wouldn't that be even worse than death? I, June Moxie, was an orphan in my previous life. Although my father died early in this life, I still have a mother to look forward to. Although my mother is in a deep sleep, she is not dead. June Moxie had always longed for it, and had always been very anxious. He had even imagined countless times in his heart, what would it feel like to really be in his mother's arms? Warm. Sweet. Safe. They all talk about a mother's embrace, and they all praise a mother's embrace, but now that I've really seen my mother, I'm in such a dilemma. Could it be that I, June Moxie, am destined to lack this in my life? In this life, I practiced the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, and from then on, I will not fall into the cycle of reincarnation, beyond the 3 realms, and from then on, I will no longer have to worry about life and death. But, the kinship in the world. I am missing the love of a father and a mother. Could it be that I will never have this chance again? Mother. Mother's love. I've looked forward to it for 2 lifetimes, I've longed for it for 2 lifetimes, I've also fantasized about it for 2 lifetimes, I've experienced 2 lifetimes. Could it be that in the end, I still can't have it? June Moxie staggered to stand up, and slowly walked to the bed. Suddenly, he slowly knelt down, and gently placed his forehead on Dongfang Wenxin's right hand. Suddenly, his heart was filled with endless bitterness, so sore that he wanted to die. What should I do? What should I do? Who can tell me? June Moxie had never felt hesitation, powerlessness, and helplessness before. Feeling the gentle touch on his forehead, that was his mother's hand, June Moxie's body convulsed in pain. He was choking with sobs, and could no longer speak. It was as if his heart was being squeezed tightly, and his eyes were blurred with tears. He could only silently ask Dongfang Wenxin, who was in front of him, "Mother. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What should I do? Mother." Calling out "Mother," June Moxie felt as if his heart was about to explode. All his longing, hope, and dreams. At this moment, were they all going to turn into nothingness? I can't accept this. I can't accept this. I really can't accept this. June Moxie raised his head, and silently roared. Tears flowed down from the corners of his eyes, and into his mouth. That bitterness seemed to have spread all the way to his heart, and it would continue to be bitter forever. So bitter. So bitter. Chapter 602. What should I do? Seeing his sleeping mother's face full of happiness, contentment, and tranquility, June Moxie's heart is in a mess at this moment. I am evil. I never deny that I am evil. I am never a good person. I only do things for myself and never care about others. I only do things according to my own preferences, fearless and unscrupulous. But, the person in front of me is my mother. Could I really wake her up from her beautiful dream and bring her into a cruel and unacceptable reality just for the sake of my own longing, for my own happiness, for the moment of warmth and reunion between mother and son that I yearned for? If she really wakes up, she will have to face the cruel reality of losing 2 of her 3 sons. How can she bear it? How could she feel at ease when she saw that her maiden family had fallen into such a miserable state because of her? Also, his mother had suffered for 10 years because of him. Would she feel so guilty that she wanted to bury herself in a hole? How can my heart be revived when it's dead? How could he let a woman whose heart had died once again face the painful life of death? Can I be so selfish? Can I really? June Moxie silently asks himself. June Xia, who has always been decisive in killing, is really in a dilemma at this moment. If I don't save her when I can, how can I be a son? Where is my conscience? How can my conscience be at ease? It was unacceptable for a son to watch his mother fall into a deep sleep. He could have saved her, but he didn't. How heartless was that? What's wrong with you? Mei Shuiyan is also choking with sobs because of everything in front of her, but with her unparalleled cultivation, she is keenly aware that something is wrong with Jun Moxie. Jun Mo Xia shook his head in agony. He stretched out his trembling hand and grabbed the small tree that was on the verge of withering on his mother's body. The moment he came into contact with it, he felt a jolt in his heart. The moment he came into contact with it, he could clearly feel that his skin had gained a lot of vitality. There was actually such a rare treasure in the world. With such a miraculous treasure, no wonder it could extend Dongfang Wen Xian's life for 10 years. Under Mei Shuiyan's confused gaze, Jun Moxie closed his eyes and used all his strength to activate the power of wood in his body. At this moment, his mind was in unprecedented grief. He connected with the Hongjun Pagoda, and all the pure energy in his body was turned into the power of wood. 4. Mother. Perhaps you really don't want to wake up. Perhaps you'd rather continue your long-cherished wish of spending a lifetime together in a dream. But even if it's a dream, I still hope to be part of your dream. I want this dream of yours to be more comfortable. Power of wood. Ever since Jun Moxie obtained this new ability, he had been practicing it. He had never slacked off, but he had never used it. But what exactly was the power of wood? The power of wood represented the purest essence of plants in the world. As long as there is enough power of wood, any magical seed can sprout, branch, bloom, and bear fruit in an instant. As long as there is enough power of wood, a tree can wither and die in an instant, and a dying plant can be rejuvenated with a snap of a finger. Seize the fortune of heaven and earth, gather the essence of the sun and moon, and transform it into the spiritual chi of the 5 elements. Power of wood. Is it shocking? Is it revealing his strength? Is it revealing his trump card? Right now, Jun Moxie did not think about it at all. He was only wholeheartedly creating a comfortable environment for his mother. Mei Shuiyan's puzzled gaze turned into astonishment, and then into horror. What kind of shocking change could cause such a calm person like her to be so shocked? Because everything in front of her eyes was too unbelievable. In Jun Moxie's hands, the magical little tree that was about to wither was rejuvenated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Divine light flowed, and the fluorescent light became denser and denser. The green that symbolized the plant's lifespan became more and more exuberant. The originally withered branches and leaves also slowly regained their lush color, and then transformed into a deep green, and then, green to the point where it was transparent. Even the whole room, because of the little tree's rejuvenation, became a delicate green, full of health and vitality. The miraculous changes didn't stop there. At the top of the small tree, a branch suddenly wriggled, and a small lump slowly bulged out. Then, it unfolded, and turned into a small piece of sparkling green leaf, and then another, and another one, and another one. Mei Shuiyan only felt that her 2 legs had gone soft, and she had no strength to support herself. She could only slowly sit on the ground, her heart full of shock. She opened her mouth, but couldn't make a sound. This kind of magical power, even she had never heard of it. This was a miracle that surpassed the legends. Slowly, the little tree that originally only had 4 or 5 withered leaves, in this instant, had transformed a lot. Not only did the leaves regain their green color, but they also grew and grew. At this moment, there were as many as 14 or 15 leaves, and the little tree's height had also increased to the size of a human head, and the branches were at least 3 times thicker. If the original little tree's vitality could support Dongfang for 10 years, then the tree in front of him could at least support it for 100 years. Jun Moxie closed his eyes, but tears continued to flow from the corners of his eyes, and the spiritual power in his body continued to flow out unreservedly. There was a limit to a person's strength, and of course, it was the same for plants. Although the little tree was magical, there was a limit to how much the essence of heaven and earth could bear. Under Jun Moxie's endless supply of spiritual power, the little tree's vitality was finally full. If he continued, Jun Moxie did not dare to continue. What if it was too weak? He finally stopped, but his eyes were still closed, and his face was full of sincerity. He held his mother's delicate hand, and gently caressed it on his face. Feeling this gentle and delicate touch, tears dripped down, wetting his mother's palm. this is what I hope for. This is what I dream of." He did not hesitate, and once again activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, and slowly poured the purest spiritual power in his body into his mother's meridians, carefully combing through every single impurity in his mother's meridians. "I'm sorry, although you are willing to sleep, and would rather follow Father in the underworld, holding your hand, and growing old together, but, as your son, I cannot let you die like this. Even if you sleep and ignore me for the rest of your life, and don't say a word to me. I am still a child with a mother." In Dongfang Wenxin's heart, there was a huge cloud of haze. It was like a fog, so dense that it was almost tangible. Jun Moxie was very clear that as long as this cloud of haze was removed, Dongfang Wenxin would immediately wake up, but, before Jun Moxie could make up his mind, it was better to temporarily ignore it. If she really woke up, and if she immediately committed suicide, then everything would not be worth it. So, Jun Moxie could only adjust his mother's meridians, and everything else, to the best state. But he could not, and did not dare to, touch the heart meridian. After a long time, Jun Moxie opened his eyes, and looked in front of him in a daze. In that position, a portrait of his father, Jun Wuhui, was smiling at him, comforting him. Jun Moxie let out a long breath, and in a low voice, as if he was talking to himself, he said, "What should I do? Am I really making the right choice now? Shui Yan, I can save mother, and let her body recover to its best state, but, her heart, I can't do it. Shui Yan, tell me, what should I do? What should I do?" As he spoke, Jun Moxie's eyes were still staring at the empty space in front of him, looking at his father's warm gaze in the portrait, as if, asking this father in the ethereal world. Mei Shuiyan was startled, and didn't know how to answer. After a long time, she finally shook her head slowly, and said blankly, "I also don't know. To be honest, this is a dead knot that cannot be solved. From a woman's point of view. If you are in the portrait and I am in the bed, I also don't want to wake up. I would rather sleep until the end of time. There is no other reason. No matter if it's a dream or an illusion, I will always have you by my side. Although the mortal world is real, I will not have you by my side." She smiled sadly and said, "Before, when Xian's mother went into a deep sleep, she drew so many portraits of Wu Hui's father to accompany her. Obviously, she had already made all the preparations. She created a perfect world for her father. If we forcefully pull her out, it would be too cruel. So, she definitely has a sufficient reason to continue sleeping. That is what she wants. Maybe we really shouldn't disturb her. If mother can get what she wants and be happy, isn't that better than anything else?" Jun Moxie sighed painfully and said, "I think so too, but since you have the ability to wake her up, I'm afraid it's not possible to keep her from waking up." Mei Shuiyan said heavily, "First of all, if mother just lies there, the two great families will be tormented. The Dongfang family has already sacrificed so much for Wen Xian's mother, and the old lady has been tortured day and night, living a life worse than death. There is also the revenge of Wu Hui's father, and the hatred of the Jun family, and the injustice of our son. And you. Can all these be abandoned? This is also a violation of the human relationship. If it's possible, let her wake up." All of a sudden, a muffled voice sounded outside the door. The two of them looked up in surprise, and saw the old lady of the Dongfang family standing at the door with tears all over her face. This poor mother still followed them in the end. The old lady's body was trembling, and she slammed her walking stick heavily on the floor. Bang! The old lady repeated, "Let her wake up." She said it very urgently, decisively, and unquestionably. Only then did she walk in. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they were also filled with great surprise. She looked at Jun Xia and said word by word, "Xia, since you have the ability to wake her up, then I'll give it to you." "Then, what are you still hesitating for? Let her wake up immediately. Immediately. Immediately." Jun Moxie said painfully, "Grandma, I also want to." "But, Grandma, mother, what will happen after she wakes up? What should I do? How will she face it? Do I really have to let mother face such a cruel reality?" Chapter 603. What identity? June Moxie shook his head blankly. Could it be that his mother had another identity that he didn't know about? Since she came to this world, her first identity is that of a daughter, a mother's daughter. The old lady of Dongfang's white hair fluttered in the wind. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she looked at June Moxie without blinking. Secondly, she is the sister of my 3 brothers. Then, she is June Wu Hui's wife. Then, she is the daughter-in-law of the June family, and finally, she is your mother. First, she is a daughter, then a wife, and finally, a mother, or perhaps, a grandchild. Old Madame Dongfang raised her head towards the sky and sighed sadly. She's sleeping now, but it's only for the identity of being someone's wife. Then, isn't mother's worry day and night, tossing and turning in bed, her heart aching? Isn't that her responsibility? I have had my mother since I was a child, lonely and destitute. Isn't it her responsibility? Since the heavy responsibility is on my shoulders, how can I continue to sleep? The old lady shouted at the last sentence. June Moxie and Mei Xuan's bodies shook, and they suddenly understood. Yes, June Moxie had been worried that his selfishness would hurt his mother, but he didn't think that not saving her would be even more selfish. So many relatives, so many true feelings, would all be hurt. She must wake up. Let her wake up. She must wake up. The old mistress said solemnly, back then, she should not have fallen into a deep slumber like a zombie. If she had really pulled out her sword and committed suicide, it would have been the end of all her troubles. She would not have been able to torment this old woman for so many years. We have never given up after tormenting the Dongfang family for so many years, hoping that she would wake up one day. We must wake her up. If she still wishes to seek death, then, this old woman would like to see how she would seek death under the service of her son and daughter-in-law, how she would face the heartache of her white-haired, elderly mother. I will wait and see, and I will not stop her. Even if the white-haired person has to send off the black-haired person, it's still better than tormenting him half-dead. When the old lady said this, 2 lines of tears uncontrollably flowed down along the wrinkles on her face. She choked and said, as a woman, I have also experienced the same thing. How can I not understand her pain? How can I not empathize with her? But, since it was her suffering, she had to bear it. He absolutely could not keep running away. If there is no joy and sorrow, how can one live a complete life? As the old lady said this, her whole body suddenly trembled. Although her words were ruthless, the strong expectation in her eyes and the great surprise of her daughter who she thought was going to wake up soon couldn't be concealed anymore. She slowly walked to the bed and gently touched her daughter's delicate face. Although her words were resolute, her movements were so gentle at this moment, as if she was afraid of waking up her daughter. Her expression and eyes were so gentle and loving. She gently moved a strand of her daughter's hair back, slowly bent down, and put her face on her daughter's face. She said softly, there is no pain that can't be endured. One Xin. I will be with you. No matter what, we will bear it together. You won't be lonely, that's good. Grandma, since you've decided to let mother wake up, then you should prepare for what happens after she wakes up. June Mo Xia made a prompt decision. He was always like this. Once he made a decision, there would be no changing it, and he would press forward. Before, he hadn't made up his mind, so he had been hesitating. Now that he had made up his mind, he could only think about what to do next. After she wakes up. After she wakes up. The old lady looked at her daughter's face affectionately. Suddenly, she couldn't help but cover her face and burst into tears, my son. After she wakes up. What awaits you is still endless suffering, or even more painful. Your husband is gone. 2 of your 3 sons have left you. My daughter, my Wen Xian. Little Wen Xian. Your life. Why is it so hard? Every time I think of this, I feel so much pain, so much pain. Do you know? Every time I think of this, I wish you would never wake up. I have a way that might let mother get well as soon as possible. Mei Shuiyan said carefully. What way? June Moxie and the old lady were overjoyed and asked at the same time. If, in order to save Mother, Mo Xia used up all his energy. Exhausted, seriously injured, and unconscious. What will happen to Mother? Mei Shuiyan said slowly. Seriously injured? Unconscious? The two of them were stunned, but they seemed to have grasped the key point and started to ponder. Suddenly, the old lady slapped her thigh and praised loudly, "Good idea." It was indeed a good plan. In this way, Wen Xian would naturally take care of her son wholeheartedly. Unknowingly, she would also put all the other important things aside. Only when her son got better would she have the mood to understand other things. As long as there was a buffer, all the things that were difficult to accept would also be diluted. This plan was based on human nature. It was really a good plan. Mo Xia, this daughter-in-law of yours is really not simple. As the saying goes, the older the ginger, the more spicier it is. The old lady, who had a clear view of the world, actually figured out the key point before June Moxie. June Moxie was very smart and immediately understood. He nodded and said, "It is indeed a good idea. Although it is a lie. But, it is still the best choice for now. Shuiyan. You are really my good wife. You can even think of such a good idea. Your husband will definitely reward you tonight." Mei Shuiyan's face turned red and she said angrily, "You. Speak properly. Don't be like that. Besides, I am not asking you to pretend to be injured. If you pretend to be injured and Mother finds out, the effect will be the opposite of what you want. It will only be effective if you are really injured." Really injured? This. The old lady was stunned and hesitated for a moment. If I am not really injured and only pretend to be injured. Moreover, I will have to disguise it for a long time. If I want to not be seen through by someone who takes care of me every day. It is really not easy. Although Mother is not a peak expert, she is still a Xian practitioner. Hiding it from her like this might not be possible. Mei Shuiyan smiled confidently and said, "However, with Mo Xia's vast divine power, it is still possible to cause a strange injury such as internal organs being shaken and power exhaustion. He just needs to control himself every day." The old lady did not understand what Mei Shuiyan said. Firstly, her cultivation was not high enough. Secondly, she did not understand June Dashao's methods. But how could June Moxie not understand? Injury? That was too easy. As long as his soul did not scatter on the spot, what kind of injury could resist the spiritual energy of heaven and earth? The control that Mei Shuiyan mentioned was to control the speed at which his injuries healed. That. Isn't it too risky? Internal organs shaken and power exhaustion? This. The old lady sucked in a breath of cold air. This is not a joke. If something really happens, wouldn't it be a waste of my efforts? My daughter is gone, and my nephew is gone. No. It is too risky. Let's change the method. Don't worry, Grandma. Mo Xia will be fine. His methods are very powerful. Mei Shuiyan smiled sweetly. Seeing that Mei Shuiyan was so confident, the old lady could not help but look at June Moxie doubtfully. Her expression gradually became serious. Because she had used all her power to look at him, but she could not see the level of her good grandson. Mo Xia, tell me honestly. What is the level of your Xian Qi cultivation? If you really reach the peak of Tian Xian, it might be possible. But with your age, it doesn't seem possible, right? June Moxie and Mei Shuiyan looked at each other and smiled. He said, "Grandma, right now, you are probably at the supreme level, right? Shen Xian level 7. Third order venerable." Although June Mo Xia used the word question, his tone was certain. "You can see through my cultivation." The old lady was shocked. She could not see through him, but he could see through her. Didn't this mean that June Moxie's cultivation was higher than hers? Yes. My current cultivation. In terms of Xian Qi, it should be Shen Xian level 8, 4th order supreme. Jun Moxie thought for a while and finally told the truth. He said, if I can go one step further, I should be superior supreme, hiss. The old lady gasped. Her eyes were wide open as she looked at her good grandson, Jun Moxie. Her body swayed, and suddenly, she was about to sit on the ground. Mei Xuan reacted quickly and held her. Shen Xian level 8. 4th order supreme. The old lady felt that she was dreaming, or this kid was lying through his teeth. She shook her head hard and said in disbelief, How? How is this possible? Nothing is impossible, Grandma. Don't worry. Mo Xia indeed has this kind of strength. If they really fight, I believe that ordinary superior supreme experts may not be his match. Mei Xuan said confidently. Mei Xuan's words were quite exaggerated. With Jun Moxie's current skills, he may not be his match. It was a direct instant kill. Previously, he killed 15 experts from the Supreme Golden City silently in the snow. Among them, there were 5 real superior supreme experts. Even the supreme assassin Chu Chi Hun would not be able to achieve such a feat, although the outside world thought he could do it now. At the end of the day, the title of the world's #1 killer, the king of killers, and the supreme killer belonged to Jun Moxie. Only Jun Dashao could be considered to be the real title. Oh! The old lady trembled as she supported herself on the bed and stood up. She looked at Mei Xuan and said, Miss, I am confident that my eyes are not blurry. But I still can't see the real strength of you and Mo Xia. If Mo Xia is already a supreme master, then what about you? The old lady was not a simple person. She had already noticed that this niece-in-law in front of her was not an ordinary person. Now that she had made it clear, she might as well get to the bottom of it. Actually, I'm just a little taller than him. Mei Xuan tried to think of an excuse, but she still managed to be modest. Chapter 604. This is a dream. This is a dream. I must be dreaming. I have been dreaming ever since I said when Xian could be saved. Otherwise, how could such an unbelievable thing happen? A zombie who had been sleeping for 10 years could wake up. 2 people who were not even 20 years old, one was a 4th order supreme martial artist and the other was a superior supreme martial artist. Shen Xian was a 9th order martial artist. Wouldn't he be a superior supreme martial artist? Even if it was a legend, there was no such person. The old lady was so happy that she was about to collapse in happiness. So what if she collapsed from such a beautiful dream? The secluded courtyard fell into an unprecedented silence. The people of the Dongfang family stood outside the courtyard, closely monitoring any movement. Dongfang Wenqing and his 2 brothers patrolled back and forth with their hands on the hilts of their swords, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The old madam sat in the bedroom, and didn't even blink her eyes. Mei Xuan was standing on the roof of the small building, looking around with her sword in her hand. This kind of precaution was already foolproof. Even if the 3 holy lands came out at the same time, Mei Xuan alone would be able to hold them off for a while. Moreover, it was in such a remote place. In the bedroom, Jun Moxie closed his eyes slightly and held his mother's hand. A huge amount of extremely pure heaven and earth spiritual energy was continuously channeled into his mother's heart, driving away the haze in her heart. Jun Mo Xia did not dare to be too hasty, and did not dare to be careless at all. Bit by bit, he resolved the problem. After all, his mother had not moved for 10 years. Even though her body had been nursed by him, it was still weak to a certain extent. If he used too much force, it might cause unimaginable damage. It was better to be safe than sorry. Jun Moxie used all his caution. There must be no mistakes. The haze in Dongfang when Xian's heart slowly disappeared under the pressure of Jun Mo Xia's powerful heaven-earth spiritual qi, disappearing without a trace. Slowly, there was only a small ball left, a small ball. If it was originally the size of an apple, now it was only the size of a strawberry seed. On the bed, Dongfang Wenxin's tranquil expression disappeared and was replaced by a deep frown. She seemed to feel that she was about to be dragged out of her sweet dream, so she was very unwilling. She still wanted to stay here, but the pulling force was so strong that she couldn't resist. She struggled with all her strength. The expression on her face became more and more painful. Her head shook violently. The old lady of Dongfang gently held her daughter's hand. Her expression was full of pity, surprise, and worry. At this moment, the old lady suddenly became afraid and regretful. If when Xian woke up, her husband was already dead, and she knew the death of her two sons, what would her reaction be? What is the most important thing in a woman's life? The most important thing was his family. Husband. Children. One dream for 10 years. The happiness in the dream disappeared instantly. When she woke up, she not only had to face the tragedy of her husband leaving her forever, but also the fact that 2 of her 3 sons had died. How cruel it was. Painful. The old lady almost didn't dare to imagine what her daughter would be like when she woke up. She just held her daughter's hand tightly and watched her daughter struggle in pain. She seemed to want to pass all her strength to her daughter to help her resist the endless pain. It was almost done. Even Mei Shuyan, who was on the roof, could clearly feel the pain and joy in Jun Moxie's heart. This was the crucial moment. Finally, Dongfang Wenxian furrowed her brows tightly and shook her head in pain. Her face was filled with the pain of parting with death, and beads of sweat the size of soybeans rolled down her forehead. Suddenly, her eyelids fluttered, and she let out a heart-wrenching scream. Wu Hui! Then she sat up abruptly. At the same time, the huge spiritual power in Jun Moxie's meridians flowed backward and exploded in his dantian. He spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood, and then continued to spit out blood. However, his hands continued to transfer spiritual power. The injury this time was not a fake injury as previously planned, but a real injury. It was a very serious injury. In order to make it look real, Jun Moxie decided to make it real. After such an explosion, all his internal organs were severely injured, and he was almost at death's door. In the eyes of the common people, Dongfang Wenxin had woken up, but Jun Moxie was also finished. He would probably be sick and bedridden for the rest of his life. This was not an exaggeration at all. He had to fight like this, because he cared too much about his mother, and he couldn't afford to lose her. For mother, he had to fight. For mother, this injury was worth it. No matter how heavy it was worth it. Dongfang Wenxian felt as if she had woken up from a distant dream. She opened her eyes blankly, and her face was still filled with pain. She could only feel a warm current flowing from her hands. She opened her eyes and saw an old face full of wrinkles looking at her with tears in his eyes. A familiar voice called out in a trembling voice, "Wenxian, my daughter, my good daughter, you've finally woken up." Dongfang Wenxin opened her eyes wide and looked at the face in front of her in disbelief. But under the effect of mother-daughter instinct, she still recognized that the old woman in front of her was her beautiful mother. She suddenly panicked and cried out involuntarily, "Mother? How did you become like this?" "I'm fine. Don't worry about me, take a look at your son first." "Ah, poor child." The old lady cried out, and her tears kept falling. "Son." Dongfang Wenxin looked over and saw a young, handsome, and familiar face in front of her. He was lying on the quilt on top of her. His eyes were closed, and his face was pale like a dead person. Blood was still flowing out of his mouth, and he was unconscious. However, there was a hint of joy at the corner of his mouth. That was his face, and the person in front of her must be her son. One of his hands was still holding her hand. That warm current was coming from that hand. Was it my son who woke me up? But, what happened to him? Why did he become like this? Dongfang Wenxin suddenly felt sour and bitter in her heart. Looking at her son's pale face and the blood at the corner of his mouth, she suddenly felt a heart-wrenching pain in her heart. Is this Mou? She looked at the son in front of her in surprise. Before she fainted, her eldest son, Mou, was already this big, but he seemed to be older than the person in front of her. Is this Cho? Her trembling hands lifted up June Moxie's right sleeve and looked at it. She shook her head and said, "It's not Cho, nor is it Mou." Suddenly, she cried out in pain, "Is it Xie?" She hurriedly reached out her hand and brushed aside her son's hair. Above his ear, there were 3 red moles. Even June Moxie himself didn't know that there were red moles at this position. They were very small, like sesame seeds, and they were placed side by side. This was also a sign that only a mother could find and remember. "It's Xie. My son Xie." Dongfang Wenxin panicked and suddenly felt a pain in her heart. "Mother. What happened to Xie? Why did he vomit so much blood? You are so powerful, please save him. Save him. What's wrong? Isn't it all your fault?" The old lady wiped her tears. "You have been asleep for 10 years, and both the Dongfang and June family have exhausted a lot of effort and manpower. In order to wake you up, Xie has practiced a magical mental cultivation method since he was young. Now, he finally succeeded in it and couldn't wait to save you. But in order to save you, this silly boy used up all his energy and caused the backlash of his power. He vomited blood and was injured. His life is in danger. You, Wenxin, look at your son. How could you? You. Sigh." The old lady let out a long sigh, and helped June Moxie to sit in her arms. She used a soft silk handkerchief to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. But this also allowed this exhausted and pale face to appear completely in front of Dongfang Wenxin. "I've been asleep for 10 years. Dongfang Wenxin murmured to herself blankly, but immediately put this matter behind her. She was anxious again, and her heart was tightly clenched. She actually forgot about her own pain, and hurriedly urged, "Mother. Will Xie be alright? Quickly think of a way. This silly boy, why does he work so hard? Why does he work so hard? How dare you say that? Didn't Xie work so hard for you, his mother? Wasn't it for him to have a mother to love him? Poor child, he has nothing left except for you, his mother, but his mother is still lying on the bed, ignoring him. How painful is his heart? How anxious is he? Have you ever thought about it?" The old lady complained, "You only know that you are sad, and only know that you are sad. You sleep in a dream, and don't want to wake up. But what about this child? Xie can be considered lucky. He managed to grow up without any illness or disaster. But he's always been looking forward to you." Dongfang Wenxin's heart ached. She lifted the quilt and was about to get off the bed. "Let me see Xie, poor child." She got off the bed and hugged June Moxie tightly in her arms. Her tears suddenly gushed out. "It turns out that I've been asleep for 10 years. It turns out that Wu Hui. He's been gone for 10 years, 10 years. What a long time. I don't know how the 3 children grew up without their mother's care. How are they?" The heart of a loving mother instantly filled her heart, and even the image of her husband that she couldn't bear to part with was temporarily thrown aside. She didn't feel anything, but the old lady opened her eyes wide. He could actually walk immediately. Just like a normal person. June Xie's methods were miraculous to what extent? How much would June Moxie's exhaustion be? At this time, the old lady was really worried. She thought that he was just a little injured, but now it seemed that the injury was not light. Dongfang Wenxin quietly walked in, and heaved a deep sigh. "All these years, little sister, you." He wanted to say a few words to her, but he choked on his words halfway. "You only know how to love your son. But do you know? Your own mother, because of you, turned white overnight." The old lady sighed sadly. "Mother. I'm not filial, I'm sorry. Xie, my Xie. I'm even more sorry." Dongfang Wenxin hugged June Moxie tightly and burst into tears. Chapter 605. A white shadow flashed, and Mei Shuiyan quietly appeared in the room. Seeing that Dongfang Wenxin had woken up, she couldn't help but feel happy. But when she saw that Jun Moxie had fainted with blood all over his mouth, she couldn't help but feel sad. With her cultivation, she could clearly see the severity of his injuries. She couldn't help but complain in her heart, "I only asked you to put on a show. I said I wanted you to get seriously injured, but I didn't ask you to risk your life to get seriously injured." He looked like he was on the verge of death, but Mei Shuiyan also knew how important Dongfang Wenxin was to Jun Moxie. Perhaps, at this moment, Jun Moxie's desire for motherly love had reached a height that even Mei Shuiyan couldn't understand. Mother. This was such a sacred name. In Jun Moxie's heart, it was the biggest demon that had haunted him for 2 lifetimes. Mother, in my previous life, why did she abandon me? Why? Don't you know how much I desire it? Even if you beat me and scold me. I'm also a person with a mother, and I'm not an orphan. In my previous life, I dominated my entire life. No one in the world didn't fear me. In the mortal world, I became an immortal legend. But, who knew the pain in my heart? Because until I died, I didn't know what my surname should be. I was like an extra person in this world. Although I was brilliant and glorious, but I didn't have a root after all. I longed for my mother, longed for motherly love. Who could understand to what extent my longing had reached? When I dreamt in the middle of the night, when the autumn wind was blowing, when I couldn't sleep, when thousands of families were reunited with lights during the spring festival, what about me? I only walked alone on the road. I didn't want to be arrogant, I didn't want to be cold-blooded. I wanted to cry in my mother's arms when I felt wronged. I wanted my mother to take care of me when I was weak, not because of the so-called care, but because of the motherly love. In this life, my mother was still here, but she was thousands of miles away, sleeping like a living dead. When I thought of myself as Jun Moxie, my mother was questioning me, "But I'm your son." I dreamed of motherly love. Jun Moxie was unconscious. The moment Dongfang Wenxin woke up, he finally fainted with a peace of mind. He blissfully fainted. Dongfang Wenxian couldn't help but ask, "This lady is?" Suddenly seeing a fairy-like beauty dressed in white appear in front of her, and her eyes were filled with heartache and concern as she looked at the son in her arms. "What young lady? This is not your daughter-in-law. Mo Xie's wife." The old lady rebuked, "Wenxian, you're already a mother-in-law. Maybe you'll have grandchildren soon, daughter-in-law. Mo Xie's wife?" Dongfang was startled. He looked at Mei Shuiyan from head to toe and finally smiled with satisfaction. He asked warmly, "Miss, what is your name?" Mei Shuiyan's face instantly turned as red as a plum blossom. She said in a low voice, "My surname is Mei Shuiyan. You're Mo Xie's wife. Why don't you call her mother?" Dongfang Wenxin looked at Mei Shuiyan with a smile. The more she looked, the more satisfied she was. "My son has good taste. This daughter-in-law is prettier than me when I was young, mother." Mei Shuiyan clenched her teeth. She was a little embarrassed, but more than that, she was shy and happy. She called her mother in a low voice. Good daughter-in-law. You're so pretty. Mo Xie has been naughty since he was young. Shui Yan, you have to bear with him." Dongfang Wenxin smiled comfortably. She hugged Jun Moxie tighter and said with tears in her eyes, "Yes. I'm already a mother-in-law. I'm going to have grandchildren soon. If Wu Hui knew about this, he would be so happy. I should have told him about this earlier." The old lady sighed sadly, I'm going to have grandchildren soon." Dongfang Wenxin suddenly frowned. Then, she smiled, "Mo Xie is the youngest. Has he already found a wife? Then Mo Yu and Mo Cho must have gotten married long ago. Or, they already have a lot of children. Sigh. I'm really not a good mother. Where are the 2 of them? Why didn't they come? Why are you in such a hurry?" The old madam forced a laugh. "This is the Dongfang family. Emosia has already gone through a lot of trouble to come here. It's not like you don't know how remote this place is, oh. Dongfang Wenxin slowly sat down. Although she still vaguely felt that something was wrong, she was relieved. She smiled and said, I forgot. This place is 17,000 miles away from the capital city of Tianxiang, right? It's really too far. That year, I had to travel thousands of miles before I saw anyone. At that time, the first person I saw was Wu Hui. He was with a few people. He was carrying one of his brothers to look for a doctor. That soldier was bitten by a snake. Fortunately, he met me that day. Otherwise, it would have been really troublesome. Dongfang Wenxin said faintly. Later, I found out that it was one of his guards. It was very hot at that time. The soldier had to travel such a long distance. His feet were so smelly. But, in order to prolong his brother's life, Wu Hui sucked the poison from his body every few hours. That was how he finally saw me. Otherwise, that soldier would have died from the poison. I was very touched at that time. A general who could treat an ordinary soldier like that. It's really admirable. Dongfang Wenxin's eyes were filled with sadness, but the corners of her mouth were inexplicably gentle. It was as if she had returned to that period of time. Although Dongfang Wenxin had been in a coma for a whole 10 years, her thoughts had also stopped at 10 years ago. She didn't know that in these 10 years, the house was still the same, but the people were different. For her, her heart was full of pain and memories. And, it was so vivid, the old lady let out a long sigh. She opened her mouth, but really didn't know how to comfort her. She stood up and said angrily, take care of your son first. Your son almost lost his life because of you. Let's wait for Emosia to recover first. Dongfang Wenxin was shocked. She looked at her son in her arms lovingly. That familiar face that made her intoxicated, only much younger. She gently lowered her head, put her face on Jun Moxie's face, and said softly, my good son. He is also Wu Hui's flesh and blood. Must make Emosia get better. San-air. My San-air. Mother's San-air, the old lady sighed in her heart and gave them a look. Although Dongfang Wenxin and the others were reluctant to leave, they also left. The old lady was the last to stand up and said, when Emosia recovers, Dongfang Wenxin. Just wait and beg for forgiveness from me. You are such an unfilial daughter, so many years, you, sigh. Finally, she let out a long sigh, stood up and left. There were only 3 people left in the room, Dongfang Wenxin, Mei Shuyan, and Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie, who had fallen into a coma, must have been suffering a tremendous amount of pain. However, his face was full of happiness and joy as he nestled in his mother's arms. For the next few days, Jun Moxie felt like he was living in heaven. Dongfang Wenxin almost didn't care about her clothes at all. Even when she slept, she set up a small bed beside her son. Every time he ate, she would personally feed him. At first, Jun Moxie was a little uncomfortable, but later, under Dongfang Wenxin's gentle insistence, he was defeated after resisting for a while. Slowly, he actually enjoyed it, snuggling in his mother's arms, enjoying his mother's deep care, smelling his mother's sweet smell, and feeling the happiness of a mother and son's hearts connected. For the first time in his 2 lives, Jun Moxie felt, what was happiness? What was dependence? It was so good to have a mother. Warmth, comfort, joy, as if all the adjectives to describe happiness in the world were not enough to describe the satisfaction he felt at this moment. I am Jun Moxie. I am Jun Moxie. I am the evil monarch. I finally have a mother. I am also a person who has a mother's love. Jun Moxie's heart was inexplicably excited. Over the past few days, he had been talking to his mother every day, telling her everything that had happened over the past few years, how mischievous he had been, how hedonistic he had been, how he had made people angry, as if there was nothing that could not be said. Then, his mother would happily point her finger at his forehead and gently reprimand him. Then, he would listen to his mother talk about how mischievous he was when he was a child, how he started to make trouble in his mother's womb, how he met his father, how they got to know each other, how they fell in love, how they accompanied each other, and how they stayed together. Every time it was like this, June Moxie would listen quietly, and Mei Shuiyan would also sit at the side and listen with a smile. But the strange thing was that Dongfang Wenxin never talked about sad things, and only talked about happy things. Even the two brothers, Jun Moyo and Jun Macho, were rarely mentioned. Since the first time she mentioned it in front of June Moxie, but June Moxie cleverly changed the topic, Dongfang Wenxin was stunned for a while, and didn't mention it again, although her face was still shrouded by a faint sadness, and her eyes were still filled with deep pain. But in front of June Moxie, she never showed it. She only took care of her son carefully, every moment, every minute, every inch of her son's food and drink, and even a strand of his hair, she took care of it to the extreme. It was as if she couldn't wait to pour the 10 years of maternal love into her son in one day, pour all her heart and soul into the son in front of her. June Moxie even had a feeling, how good would it be if it could go on like this forever? This kind of feeling was really too nostalgic. In these days, the Dongfang family came to visit every day, but every time they came, they left in a hurry. Even the old lady was no exception. Because they were all afraid to see Dongfang Wenxin's eyes. Sometimes, her eyes were filled with pain and questions, and facing these questions, even the old lady couldn't bear to tell her the truth. She could only come in a hurry and leave in a hurry every time, Dongfang Wenxin was left standing by the door thoughtfully, and the anxiety and the feeling of inauspiciousness in her eyes were also getting stronger and stronger, and more worried. June Moxie also keenly sensed the heavy pressure in Dongfang Wenxin's heart, and the deep sorrow. Although she never revealed it, never said it, and always tried to hide it, but June Moxie could feel it. June Moxie finally decided to get to the bottom of it. Instead of keeping it in their hearts with tacit understanding, it was better to get to the bottom of it. Grief only needed to be vented with a good cry, and it would be much better. Seeing his mother so depressed every day, June Xia couldn't bear it. Of course, the biggest thing that gave June Moxie the courage to do so was a certain moment when Dongfang Wenxin wasn't around, and Mei Shuiyan said unintentionally, "I really can't bear to see my mother in such pain. If the dead could be resurrected, how good it would be." Chapter 606. After hearing Mei Shuiyan's words, June Moxie had a flash of inspiration and decided on one thing: a lie. Yes, a lie. After telling his mother the truth, he would make up a white lie. He would say that he had received the teachings of an immortal, but his current cultivation was not strong enough to change his fate and bring the dead back to life. However, in the future, he would be able to bring his father back to life. Let the old lady carry on with this beautiful hope and live on with a strong will. Even though this was a huge lie, it was still much better than having her heart turn into ashes right now. Even though it was a lie, how much love did it take to deceive her like this? Even though it was a lie, it was the sincerity of a son towards his mother. As long as there was hope, the future would not be dark anymore. As for the future, let's talk about it in the future. Let's take one step at a time. If he let her go on like this, she would probably repeat the same mistake sooner or later. Who knows what will happen in the future? The door opened, and Dongfang Wenxian walked in lightly with a bowl of bird's nest soup in her hands. The moment she entered, she saw June Xia half lying on the pillow in a daze. She couldn't help but reprimand him. "Child, your injuries haven't healed yet, why are you moving around? Lie down quickly, why are you so lost in thought?" June Moxie smiled, but this time, he didn't listen to her. He looked into Dongfang Wenxin's eyes seriously and said seriously, "Mother, I have something to say, can you believe me? It might be a bit ridiculous, but I hope you can believe me." "I believe you. I believe everything my son says. No matter how ridiculous it is, I will believe it." Dongfang Wenxin smiled and scooped up a spoonful of bird's nest soup. She blew on it and tasted the temperature. Then, she brought it to her son's mouth and coaxed, "Good boy. Open your mouth quickly." The more you eat, the faster you will recover. It's not hot at all. Ah, June Moxie smiled bitterly. It seemed like his mother was taking care of him like a 3-year-old child. However, this kind of feeling, apart from the awkwardness, was also very intoxicating. Really intoxicating. Mother, let me show you something first. Watch carefully. June Moxie drank a spoonful of porridge and said excitedly. As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand. There was a rose seed in his palm. Isn't this just a flower seed? What's there to look at? Is it some kind of rare seed? Dongfang Wen Xian smiled lightly, but there was still an unconcealable depression in her eyes. Is it just an ordinary flower seed? However, you'd better watch carefully. June Moxie smiled mysteriously as he quickly circulated the power of wood in his body. What happened next shocked Dongfang Wen Xian so much that she opened her mouth wide and almost dropped the delicate bowl in her hand. The dark brown seed in June Moxie's palm suddenly turned green. Then, a thin bud slowly swayed out. It grew rapidly, sprouted, and grew taller. Slowly, it grew into a flower tree that was 3 feet tall, and the trunk was as thick as an index finger. The surprise didn't end, and the change didn't stop either. On the branch of the rose, a small pink bud slowly bulged, grew slowly, and opened slowly. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, 9 fragrant roses appeared in June Moxie's hand out of nowhere. The whole room was instantly filled with the fragrance of roses. This. What's going on? Is this a magic trick? Dongfang Wen Xian was tongue-tied. She looked at the rose tree in her son's hand, and was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Magic tricks use props, but these are real flowers. Mother, can you smell these flowers and see if they smell good? June Moxie squinted his eyes proudly, like a child who had gotten a good toy and couldn't wait to show it off in front of his mother. This is all real? How is this possible? Dongfang Wen Xian was so shocked that she couldn't help but touch the rose with her hand. She lowered her head and sniffed it. She could clearly smell that the fragrance of the flower was real. She unconsciously exerted a little force on her hand, and couldn't help but let out a soft cry of awe. Her hand was pricked by the thorns of the rose, and a drop of bright red blood seeped out. So, this wasn't a dream. It really wasn't a dream? Such a miracle was actually real. Such a miracle actually happened right in front of her eyes. Mother, this is not a magic trick or a trick. This is the real magic of the gods. When I saved my mother previously, I was able to revive that withered little tree, and it was also because of this divine ability. June Moxie looked at Dongfang Wen Xian seriously. The effect of this magic is not limited to this. My current cultivation is still low, and I don't have any more powerful magic. If I can cultivate it to a certain level, I can move mountains and fill seas, chase after the stars and the moon. I can also make 1,000 miles of forest wither overnight, or turn a 10,000 miles of wasteland into a sea of forest in an instant. Of course, I can also make a person with a terminal illness recover instantly, and even make an ordinary low-level Xian Qi practitioner transform into a supreme master in an instant. He looked at Dongfang Wen Xian fixedly, and said word by word, if I really cultivate it to the extreme, it's normal for a person on the brink of death to grow flesh and bones. If I can really communicate with the world and the netherworld, I can even make the dead come back to life. Dongfang Wen Xian felt dizzy. Her body swayed, and the delicate porcelain bowl in her hand finally fell to the ground with a "pa" sound. The sound was so clear that it seemed to resonate in her heart. Then, Dongfang Wen Xian's body swayed, and she softly fell down. Mei Shuyan, who was beside her, quickly caught her and held her in her arms. In just a moment, Dongfang Wen Xian slowly woke up. As soon as she woke up, she couldn't wait to reach out her hands and touch the flower tree in front of her obsessively. Although she was constantly pierced, she didn't seem to feel it at all. There was only an intoxicated look on her face, and her tears flowed down continuously. It was as if what she was touching was not a flower, but a dream. An earth-shattering dream that was within reach. With Dongfang Wen Xian's intelligence, how could she not understand the meaning of June Moxie's words? She didn't want to believe it, but this obvious miracle appeared in front of her eyes. In such an instant, an ordinary seed could germinate and bloom. With such a miraculous scene happening in front of her, what else couldn't she do? Her son had just said that his cultivation level was still low, and his cultivation level was still low, so this was the best he could do. But if he could achieve such a miracle with such a low cultivation level, what would happen if he really reached an extremely high level? At this moment, the room suddenly shone with a green light. The strange little tree that was originally placed on Dongfang Wen Xian's chest had been placed on a piece of warm jade ever since Dongfang Wen Xian woke up. At this moment, it felt the majestic power of wood released from June Moxie, and suddenly flew over. It slowly flew to the front of June Moxie, and started to circle around his body. It seemed to be a little anxious. June Moxie's heart stirred. He stretched out his hand, and let it fall on his palm. Then, the Hongjun Pagoda suddenly opened in his mind. And, that small tree disappeared from his palm with a whooshing sound. Dongfang Wen Xian was shocked again. She was no stranger to this little tree. Although this little tree was found by the old lady after she fell asleep to help her extend her life, it had been almost 10 years. Even though it was a beautiful dream that she didn't want to wake up from, this little tree still played a part in it. It was because of this magical little tree that she, a living dead person, had survived for 10 years. This magical little tree that had almost exhausted its vitality was revived because of her son, and now it seemed to have flown into her son's body spontaneously. This son of hers was really too mysterious, or anything could happen to him. June Moxie could clearly feel that after the little tree entered the Hongjun Pagoda, it seemed to be pulled by something and flew straight to the first level. There, the 2 soul-replenishing jades that June Moxie had obtained from the Shao family were originally sitting there peacefully. Suddenly, with a clear buzzing sound, they separated. The little tree flew slowly to the center of the 2 soul-replenishing jades and landed slowly. The 2 soul-replenishing jades closed with a snap, sandwiching the roots of the little tree in the middle. The 3 seemed to have merged into one in an instant, becoming inseparable. From the roots of the little tree, a few roots extended out and wrapped around the 2 soul-replenishing jades. This change was completely out of June Moxie's expectations. He tried again and again, but he couldn't move it out. This little tree ran in on its own and actually settled down inside. It couldn't be chased out anymore. This was the first time June Moxie had encountered such a thing. He couldn't help but laugh bitterly. What should he do? This was something that his grandmother's family had spent almost all of their fortune to get. How could he just take it away without knowing what was going on? At this time, Dongfang Wen Xian had already regained her senses, but her expression was still rather agitated. Her delicate body was trembling, and her eyes were shining with tears. She looked at her son without blinking and asked in a trembling voice, "Moxie. Son, what did you say? What do you want to say?" The intelligent Dongfang Wen Xian had already understood her son's intentions, but she still wanted to get a definite answer from her son's mouth. "I said, in time, I might be able to bring father back to life." June Moxie looked at her fixedly and said word by word, "But this needs time. It might take a lot of time." He paused, and his face twisted a little. He took a deep breath and threw out the main show, even my 2 brothers, can be brought back to life." Dongfang Wen Xian's body shook violently again. She murmured, "They can also be brought back to life, they can also be brought back to life." Suddenly, tears gushed out of her eyes and she said weakly, "So, my premonition was right. Not only Wu Hui, but also Mou. Mo Cho. My children. What happened to them? What happened to them?" Suddenly, she felt a pain in her heart. She covered her face with her hands. What happened in these years? What on earth happened? Why even? Mother. You don't have to be so sad. June Moxie said resolutely, "I just said. I can do it, I can definitely do it. I can bring them back to life." Chapter 607. I will live well. Emos yeah. Don't worry, although I am not a good mother, I understand what you mean. Dongfang Wen Xian sobbed sadly and said, not to mention that you've given me a glimmer of hope today, even if there's no hope, I will not seek death again. Mother wants to see you grow up, to see you shake the world, to see you and your wife have children. Mother also wants to see you take revenge for your father. Revenge? I have not taken my revenge yet. How can I seek death again? In Dongfang Wen Xian's eyes, a terrifying flame of hatred shot out. In her tears, the deep hatred seemed to be burning fiercely. Your eldest brother and second brother, how did they die? Jun Moxie closed his eyes and said with hatred, Blizzard Silver City. Shao Clan. Even. Third uncle Jun Wui was plotted against by the Shao clan, and was almost permanently disabled, unable to walk for 10 years. Shao family. Dongfang Wen Xian let out a shrill scream. The hatred of killing my husband and son. Shao clan. I'll leave for the Silver Blizzard City as soon as I've recovered from my injuries. Jun Moxie's eyes were burning with hatred. What's a mere oath? The Sword Peak should collapse. The Shao clan should be exterminated. You? Dongfang Wen Xian had just recovered from her anger, but she suddenly became worried. Emos yeah, don't be impulsive. This matter can be discussed at length. You must be fully prepared. As she said this, she suddenly burst into tears again. Emos yeah, I can only rely on you now. Don't be impulsive. If anything happens to you, I will really have no hope of living anymore. If taking revenge will put you in danger, I would rather not take revenge. Mother, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I'll try my best to take care of myself. Jun Moxie was moved and said, if I didn't have absolute confidence, I would never act rashly. Mother only has Emos yeah by her side, and Emos yeah also only has mother by his side, then I'm relieved. Nodding lightly, Dongfang Wen Xian seemed to be a bit bashful. Her face turned red as she asked in a low voice, Emos yeah, tell me the truth. Can your father, really, come back to life? Her voice was filled with anticipation and uneasiness. She was worried about personal gains and losses, and it was obvious that she had reached her limit. I promise. If there's anything that I'm hiding from you, just call me. Jun Moxie raised his hand and said solemnly. Dongfang Wen Xian hurriedly covered his mouth with her hand and shook her head in panic. No need to swear. I believe you. Mother really believed it. Really? Jun Moxie heaved a long sigh of relief in his heart. In the next few days, Jun Moxie's body was obviously getting better, and Dongfang Wen Xian's emotions were also getting more and more stable. She even took down all the portraits of Jun Wuhui in the room and put them away carefully. In her eyes, the endless sorrow had mostly disappeared, and what replaced it was sincere hope. With regards to this white lie, Jun Emos yeah felt a little guilty. But more than that, he felt an indescribable joy. Living with hope. Even if it was an extremely faint hope. It was still better than despair. On this day, in the hall of the Dongfang family. The old lady, the three Dongfang brothers, Jun Moxie, Mei Shuiyan, and Dongfang Wen Xian were all sitting there. Dongfang Wen Xian sat beside her son, and from time to time, she would raise her head to look at her son, and there would be a doting smile on her face. It seemed that no matter where her son was, no matter how old he would still be the naked baby that she held in her arms. The old lady's complexion had also obviously improved. Her daughter had woken up, and her will to die was gone. She was full of vitality. The unexpected arrival of her grandson this time really brought too many surprises, and he even brought a granddaughter-in-law, and such a powerful granddaughter-in-law. The old lady had been smiling a lot these days, and the knot in her heart was gone. Moreover, Jun Moxie used his spiritual power to soothe her body, and she seemed to have become 10 years younger all of a sudden. The capable, domineering, and fierce aura that she had in the past had returned to her. At this time, the old lady was looking through a thick pile of intelligence from the outside world. She frowned and seemed to be looking for something. All these years, the communication between the Dongfang family and the outside world was completely based on these intelligence reports. Finally, she coughed and took out a set of intelligence reports. She said, "There are a few important news here. Everyone, please be careful. Although we are not in the martial world, there are still some people who go out to deal with the necessary things occasionally. Some situations must be reported to all the juniors in the family, in case you cause big trouble. If you provoke someone that you shouldn't provoke." The three Dongfang Wenqing brothers agreed in unison. The old lady looked at Jun Moxie and said meaningfully, "Xia, you can't stop running around in the martial world. You should know that there are some things that you shouldn't provoke recklessly. No matter how strong you are, there will always be someone stronger. Do you understand?" Jun Moxie was startled. He didn't know what his grandmother meant, but since the elders had spoken, he could only agree first. A few days ago, there were many battles. The three Holy Lands sent out a total of 90 experts to encircle the number one person of Tianfa, Venerable Mei, dozens of times. But in the end, they suffered heavy losses and suffered great losses. The strength of the Beast King of Tianfa, Venerable Mei, is really amazing. I believe that even the people in charge of the three Holy Lands are no better than him. When the old lady said this, Jun Moxie suddenly coughed violently. Mei Shuiyan also opened her eyes wide in shock. Her pretty eyes looked around suspiciously. When she heard the last sentence of the old lady, her face turned red, and she pursed her lips and lowered her head. Jun Moxie almost thought that the old lady was purposely joking with them, right? The Venerable Mei, who was encircled, is sitting in front of you right now. Everyone here is family, there's no need to praise him like this. The old lady glared at him and said to everyone, "This matter is a huge whirlpool. You must pay attention. Once you step into it, not to mention the Dongfang family, even if all the aristocratic families in the world join together, they won't be able to escape the fate of being annihilated." "Mother, is the battle between the three Holy Lands and the Tianfa forest so important? I only knew about the existence of the three Holy Lands the last time I went to Tianfa. I also saw a few of the seniors of the three Holy Lands. The three Holy Lands are naturally very powerful, but to say that the three Holy Lands can resist all the aristocratic families in the world, isn't that a little too much?" Dongfang Wenqing said in bewilderment, moreover, that Venerable Mei has the air of a gentleman. After the last battle in the southern Heaven City, Tianfa's side had already gained the upper hand. But they still chose to withdraw their troops in the end. It's clear that they don't want to be enemies with the humans. In fact, it can even be said that they are magnanimous. I really don't understand why the three holy and one ferocious would fight like that. What do you know? First of all, the strength of the three Holy Lands that you've seen is only the tip of the iceberg. The true strength of the three Holy Lands is much, much more terrifying than what you can imagine. Secondly, let's not talk about the Venerable Mei, but there must be some other reason behind this. A battle of this level is not something that ordinary Xian cultivators can come into contact with. Just a touch and you'll die. Don't think that you'll be fine just by watching from afar. Let me tell you clearly, the moment you meet with something like this, run as far as you can. Put away your pitiful heart of righteousness. In a battle like this, your heart of righteousness is just a joke. And the most tragic joke. The old lady reprimanded mercilessly. The two of you are the same. The old lady looked at Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan coldly and warned, although your current strength is not bad, but it's better to stay far away from the matter of the three Holy Lands surrounding Venerable Mei. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan looked at each other and smiled bitterly. If we had a choice, we would definitely choose to run away, but we are the people involved, how can we run away? But how did this information come about? Why did they only mention Venerable Mei and not Jun Moxie? And not even mention the Jun family? Isn't this too ridiculous? This intelligence work is too much of a failure. Also, Venerable Mei is currently working together with the Supreme Assassin, Chu Chihuan, to deal with the three Holy Lands' pursuit and launch a bloody revenge. The old lady sighed, that Chu Chihuan is known as the Supreme Assassin, But he's a ghost of a generation, always appearing and disappearing like a ghost, killing people without leaving a trace. But to go against the 3 holy lands like this, he's overestimating himself. Even if he's lucky enough to gain the upper hand occasionally, how can the 3 holy lands' 10,000 years of accumulation be easy to deal with? How can a mere Chu Chihuan be able to resist them? To get involved so recklessly, you'll just lose your life for nothing. If Chu Chihuan could hear the old lady's evaluation, he would definitely cry bitterly. Heavens, earth! Only a bastard would want to get involved in this matter. How would I know what was going on? How could I be so muddle-headed that disaster fell from the sky? I've been chased for so long, and I still haven't figured out the reason until now, but, since Venerable Mei has already left the Tianfa forest, and the battle in Tiannan, our Dongfang family's oath has already been broken by half. What's left is the collapse of the Sword Peak. The old lady said worriedly, the Xian beasts have all come out of Tianfa. We can use tricks, but the Sword Peak has stood for millions of years, how can it collapse so easily? The latter is too difficult. Maybe it will collapse tomorrow. Don't worry, Grandma. The heavens will always protect the good. Jun Mo Xie vowed solemnly. Go away. What does a kid know? How can such a thing be done just by opening your mouth? Our Dongfang family has never been a kind family. If someone punches me, I'll return it with 10 swords. Kind person. Is that how Jun Zhantian, that old thing, taught you? The old lady reprimanded Jun Moxie in a bad mood. She also reprimanded the Dongfang family. Mo Xia, your grandmother and uncle are discussing things. You're just a kid, don't interrupt. Dongfang Wenxin warned gently. Then, he said unhappily, Mother. Mo Xia is still a kid. Aren't you afraid of scaring him by being so loud? When he grows up. Chapter 608. The old lady took a few deep breaths and said bitterly, When Xian, it's not that I want to lecture you, but even if you want to spoil your child, there should be a limit. Mo Xia is still a child. His cultivation is even higher than mine. No matter how high his cultivation is, he's still a child. If his cultivation is higher, he's not my son anymore. Dongfang Wen Xian was a little unreasonable and protective of her child. The old lady and Jun Moxie were both speechless. Grandma, let me take a look at these reports. Jun Moxie took the reports and looked through them one by one. Mei Shuyan, who was beside him, also looked over. Obviously, she had the same question. As they watched, both of them frowned. Strange. This was too strange. These reports only talked about how the 3 holy lands surrounded Venerable Mei and how fierce the battle was. It was very detailed, but there was not a single mention of Jun Moxie. What was going on? These 2 people had obviously left together. They were ambushed together, and they were attacked together. In this place, there was actually nothing for Jun Mo Xia to do. What was going on? The 2 of them looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. Mei Shuyan furrowed her brows and thought for a while. Then, she secretly transmitted her voice. The 3 holy lands must be wary of your master and purposely erased your name from the intelligence report. This matter is highly possible. After all, if such an ambush angered him, the 3 holy lands would not be able to bear it. As long as they don't mention you, when you go back after a period of time, the storm will naturally disappear. That makes sense. Jun Moxie understood. With the power of the 3 holy lands, it was not difficult for them to purposely change the reports to this extent. Moreover, the ambush happened in the wilderness, and no one saw it. Naturally, they could say whatever they wanted. Now that Mo Xia's cultivation has reached a high level, Shui Yan is his strongest helper. With such strength, dealing with the Shao family or even the entire Silver Blizzard City would be a cinch. Li Ju Tian is dead, and Yunbi Chen hasn't appeared in the world for a long time. The Silver Blizzard City is no longer a threat. So, it's time for our Dongfang family to prepare for a comeback. Wen Qin, Wen Jian, Wen Dao, the three of you are responsible for training the 3 talents assassins of heaven, earth, and man. How are the results? How many people have reached the standard? Dongfang Wenqing stood up and said, 36 sky-ranked assassins have qualified. Currently, there are 71 qualified Earth-rank assassins. As for human-rank assassins, there are currently a total of 341. No. The power that he could use was still too little. It wasn't of much use at all. Hurry up and practice. Even if you die, you have to practice. Mo Xia will set off for the Silver Blizzard City at any time. Wang Zhan is confident that he has the absolute advantage in terms of strength. What if the strength of our soldiers can't keep up? At that time, at least 50 sky-ranked assassins and 100 earth-ranked assassins will follow Mo Xia to take revenge. You have to know that we, the Dongfang family, haven't rescinded our vows yet. The old lady ordered in a gloomy tone. Dongfang Wenqing and the other 2 agreed, but their faces showed that they were in a dilemma. Jun and Mo Xia felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Grandma is so anxious because of my revenge. So, he winked at Mei Xuan. Mei Xuan understood. She stood up and took out a few small jade bottles from her bosom. She smiled and said, Grandma, Xuan has some good things here. With these, the previous problem will no longer be a problem. What are these? The old lady asked in surprise. The Dongfang family was located in a remote area, so they still didn't know about the transcendent pills. Although Dongfang Wenqing and the other 2 knew about the 10 years pill, they only mentioned it when they came back and didn't explain it in detail. So, the old lady didn't know about it. These are the miraculous pills refined by Mo Xia's Master. These are the 10 years pills. Each pill can increase a Xian practitioner's Xian Qi by 10 years. There are 2 bottles here, and each bottle contains 100 pills. These 2 bottles contain the bone-tempering pills, which can be used to change a person's physique. There are also 200 pills. These pills are used to train future talents for the Dongfang family. Mei Xuan smiled as she introduced the pills. When she said the words, Mo Xia's master, she couldn't help but pause. Then, she continued, as for the other 3 bottles, they are the real rare pills. This is the Vitality Linkage Pill, which can increase a Xian practitioner's speed by 3 times, regardless of the foundation. This is the Vitality Gathering Pill, which can increase a Xian practitioner's speed by 3 times. And finally, the Heavenly Vitality Pill, which can directly increase a person's pure strength by 50 years. These 3 pills are very rare, and there are only 10 pills in each bottle. But, they are specially prepared for grandma and uncles. But, if someone else were to take them, they must be at least at the peak of the Tian Xian realm in order to take them. Otherwise, their bodies will explode and they will die. Jun Moxie had refined many of these pills in this period of time, and they had come in handy now. Mei Xuan had only taken out a very small part of them. But, the Dongfang family's current strength wouldn't be able to use them even if they had more. In fact, these pills were already more than 3 times more than what they had. As Mei Xuan spoke, Dongfang, the old lady, and Dongfang Wenqing gasped in shock. Then, their mouths opened wider and wider, and they couldn't close them anymore. This was simply something that had never appeared in the legends, and now, it actually appeared in front of them. And Dongfang Wenqian's face was full of excitement. Between her brows, there was obviously a bit more expectation. Didn't all these miracles and legends prove that my son really had that kind of magical power? Could it be that what Mo Xia said was actually true? Although Dongfang Wenqian had said that she believed him, she was still doubtful in her heart. To a large extent, she had only agreed to it because she didn't want to disappoint her son. After all, bringing the dead back to life was such an unimaginable miracle, how could it be done lightly? But now, at this moment, in her heart, there was a bit more confidence. She had really ignited her hope. The old lady of Dongfang looked very excited. She took a deep breath and said, Mo Xia, these things are too precious. How can we afford it? Grandma, aren't you being a little too polite? I, Jun Moxie, am the grandson of the Dongfang family. We are a family, why can't we afford it? Besides, speaking of preciousness, in this world, what can be more precious than family? Jun Moxie smiled and said, so, if you want to say that we can't afford it, it's only me who can't afford it. I even think that these things are really too little. Good. Well said, this sentence is so well said. In this world, what can be more precious than family? The old lady praised, just because of this sentence, Moxia, you have really grown up. Wen Xian, you really should be proud of your son. He is so young, but he knows so much more than you do. As his mother, you should learn to be like your good son. Dongfang Wen Xian's face turned red and she lowered her head, but she was very satisfied in her heart. Because, that was her own son, although her mother had scolded her, she had praised her son, which made her even happier than if she had praised herself. Moxia, about Blizzard Silver City, do you have any specific plans? Do you have any strategies? The old lady put away the jade bottle and asked cautiously. Blizzard Silver City? I don't have any specific plans. Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows and said, it's nothing more than to collapse the Sword Peak, flatten Blizzard Silver City, drag out the Shao family members one by one, and put them to death. What kind of strategies do we even need? That's not a plan. If I had a plan, wouldn't I have flattened the entire snow mountain? The third uncle, Dongfang Wendao, was startled. He sucked in a breath of cold air and mumbled as if he had a toothache. Everything must be planned out before taking action. Caution is the parent of safety. You can't be impulsive right now. You must not be arrogant just because you are stronger than others. You must know that there is always someone better out there. The old lady warned. I understand. I am planning to leave the Dongfang family in the next 2 days and return to the Jun residence to prepare for the trip to Blizzard Silver City. Jun Moxie replied respectfully. Oh? That's good too. Wen Xian, what about you? The old lady turned around and looked at her daughter. Dongfang Wen Xian replied calmly, of course I will go back with my son. I am the daughter-in-law of the Jun family after all. I have not served my in-laws well these past few years. I have been very unfilial. Now that I have woken up, I will naturally make up for the past 10 years. If I don't do this, how can I face Wu Hui? How can I face my 2 pitiful children? The old lady let out a long sigh. She raised her head and looked into the distance. After a long time, she closed her eyes and said sadly, all right. She lowered her head and looked at her daughter. Her eyes were full of pity and reluctance. However, she said sternly, Dongfang Wen Xian, since you have made such a decision, I will not stop you. But you must always remember. You are a mother. You must not let down your mother, your husband's family, and the world. You must not let down your son, daughter-in-law, and future grandchildren. I don't want you to fall asleep and be carried back. Do you understand? Dongfang Wen Xian smiled sadly and said, Mother, don't worry. I have thought it through. I will never bring shame to the Dongfang family again. That's good. The old lady closed her eyes and did not speak anymore. That afternoon, Jun Moxie and Mei Shuyan visited the training base of the Dongfang family with the company of his 3 uncles. They also made many suggestions for improvement. With his experience as the king of assassins and his wholehearted guidance, almost every word he said was treated as a golden rule by Dongfang Wenqing and the other 2 uncles. They were so inspired that they almost took pen and paper and followed behind him to take notes. After that, Jun Moxie sorted out a training plan. It was also the training content of his previous life. He just deleted some parts and gave it to Dongfang Wenqing. Jun Moxie was very confident that with the foundation of the Dongfang family, if he used this plan as the foundation, the rise of the martial world would be just around the corner. Chapter 609. The old lady readily agreed and said disdainfully, that thing, I don't know what it is. Anyway, I got it by accident, and it's good for the body. Other than that, it has no other use. It's not good for cultivation, and it can't improve one's skills. It's just used to prolong your mother's life. If it wasn't useful for your mother, maybe she wouldn't know where to throw it away. Take it, see what's good here, take a few more. Jun Moxie touched his nose and was somewhat speechless. This was obviously a treasure of heaven and earth, and the old lady actually said that it was almost thrown away. Although he knew that the old lady said this to let him not take it to heart, but Jun Moxie still felt wronged for this treasure of heaven and earth. Because, the old lady's lack of attention to this small tree was obvious at a glance, and it wasn't fake. In fact, not to mention the old lady, even Jun Moxie himself didn't know what this small tree was at the moment. But although Jun Moxie didn't know what it was, he firmly believed that as long as it was recognized by the Hongjun Pagoda, then it was a rare treasure in the world. This matter couldn't be wrong. Dongfang Third Master and his wife, along with their children, sat at a table, feeling proud of themselves. Dongfang Wenqing and Dongfang Wenjian both had a face full of envy. The wives and concubines beside them were even more resentful. Once a woman was a few years older, once she saw others teasing children, how could she restrain her maternal instincts? Jun Mo Xie's heart was filled with joy after solving several major problems in a row. So, he noticed that Dongfang Wenqing was frowning. So, he couldn't help but sneakily ask, "Uncle, what's the matter? You have so many aunts, why didn't you get me a cousin or something? Isn't it a bit of a waste? You think I don't want to? Your grandmother complained a lot about me." Dongfang Wenqing glared at him angrily. "But these women are so disappointing. What can I do?" Jun Moxie rolls his eyes. It might be possible for 1 or 2 wives to be infertile. But if all 59 wives are infertile, then Dongfang Wenqing's luck is too horrible. With such a probability, you can buy a lottery, and win every single one of them. Why didn't he just say that it was because of him? Jun Moxie was a little disdainful. He squinted his eyes and said sneakily, "I'm quite knowledgeable in this area. I was the one who fixed my third uncle's leg. If first uncle trusts me, I can guarantee that you'll be hugging babies this time next year, and there will be several of them." "Really?" Dongfang Wenqing sat up straight and looked at Jun Moxie with her lantern-like eyes. She breathed heavily and grabbed her nephew's hand. "You're not lying to me, are you?" The people around him were shocked. "Damn! What does this first master want to do? Why would I lie to you? It's true." Jun Moxie squinted his eyes and smiled mysteriously. He said, "Actually, I can see it at first glance. Not only you, but second uncle also has this problem, right?" Dongfang Wenqing blushed. She said shyly, Don't mention it. It's really a misfortune for our family, you can't control yourself when you're young." Jun Moxie sighed pretentiously. He said earnestly, "The absurdity of youth often brings a bitter consequence for life." This sentence is the same for both men and women. Although it's said that it's a waste to be romantic when you're young, there's a limit to everything. These words were what Dongfang Wenqing said to Jun Moxie when they were in Tiannan. Now, both of them had, believe it or not, "I'll beat you up." Dongfang Wenqing was a little impatient. She roared at Jun Moxie. Then, she looked at the people around her, who were about to prick up their ears to listen. She immediately scared them away. Let me help you take a closer look." Jun Moxie grabbed Dongfang Wenqing's hand and injected a stream of natural energy into his body. Then, he used the pure life force of the power of wood to go through his body. Then, he took out a small jade bottle and said, "Take 1 pill every day for half a month. Within half a month, you must not have sex." After half a month, Jun Mo Xie revealed a manly smile. However, Dongfang Wenqing snatched the jade bottle from his hands, and casually slapped his head. Then, he put on the airs of an uncle, and glared at Jun Mo Xie as he reprimanded, "What are you thinking about at such a young age? How could you speak of such an unrefined matter with such relish? It seems that you're the #1 foppish young man in the capital city. I'll have to tell your mother and let her teach you a lesson. His other hand was like a weasel that had stolen a chicken, and he put the jade bottle into his bosom at the speed of lightning. The moment he said that, his voice was very loud. More than 200 pairs of eyes turned to look at June Emo Sia like searchlights. Their eyes were full of curiosity, obviously wanting to know what this little fellow had said to actually be reprimanded by the Grand Elder. It must have been something very unbearable. Otherwise, why would the Grand Elder reprimand him in front of everyone? June Emo Sia was infuriated. He had never seen such a shameless person who didn't know what was good for him. I helped you solve your lifetime's difficulties out of goodwill. It's fine if you didn't say anything after getting the benefits. But to cover up your embarrassment, you pushed me to the front of the awkward stage? This can't be tolerated. I can tolerate it, but I can't tolerate it either. Since I can't tolerate it anymore, there's no need to tolerate it anymore. June Moxie rolled his eyes and moved closer to him mysteriously. He said, Grand Uncle, as long as you take the medicine and follow the other movements and incantations, it'll be foolproof. Maybe when I come back, you'll have a group of children. There are specific movements and incantations. Dongfang Wenqing was stunned. Just a moment ago, he was still secretly delighted that he had finally made a fool out of this brat. Moreover, he had successfully protected his face. Most importantly, he had even obtained an enormous benefit. Who would have thought that before he could even blink, a pail of cold water would be poured down on him? He had just made a fool out of him. With this brat's vengeful character, how could he possibly let him off? She could not help but be vigilant. What conditions do you have? Tell me. Conditions? June Moxie cried out, feeling wronged. Do I need to talk about conditions with you, Grand Elder? Since you see me as such a despicable person, I won't say it. You've made me sad and wronged. I was filled with enthusiasm and gratitude, that's why I wanted to help you solve this problem. It's my fault. It's my fault. Uncle is wrong. Uncle is wrong. Dongfang Wenqing quickly covered his mouth, and apologized profusely. Then, he shamelessly asked, Good nephew, what kind of movement and incantation are these? Hurry up and tell Uncle. Well, who asked you to be my uncle? We're all on the same side, so I'll tell you. June Emo Sia sighed helplessly. It seemed as if he had suffered a huge grievance. What a good boy. Uncle, thank you so much. Dongfang Wenqing was overjoyed. Moving closer to Uncle Dongfang's ear, June Moxie tried to make his voice inaudible. This movement needs to be in the air. It may be a little tiring. You have to hold on. Yes, hanging upside down. Yes, Dongfang Wenqing nodded repeatedly, frowning seriously. She tried to memorize it wholeheartedly, for fear that she would miss a word and ruin the whole thing. And the incantations are. Listen, remember carefully. You have to match the movements. Yes, the incantations are like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Yin and yang are in harmony, heaven and earth are in peace. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Change your posture and do it again. June Moxie taught seriously. Dongfang Wenqing memorized it wholeheartedly. She was so anxious that her forehead was almost sweating. I'm old, so my memory is not good. Fortunately, it's not very long, so it's easy to remember. As soon as June Moxie finished reciting, Dongfang Wenqing was still frowning and muttering. June Moxie asked kindly, Have you memorized it? Dongfang Wenqing furrowed his brows and stood up. He didn't say anything, and walked out with a calm and dignified face. He strode straight to the study room. It seems like a good memory is inferior to a lousy pen. I've memorized it, but what if I forget it? It's better to write it down, Emo Sia, where did your first uncle go? Dongfang Wenjian sat down and asked suspiciously. Well. He probably drank a little too much and went to the toilet. June Moxie chuckled. The next step was to solve the problem of Dongfang Wenjian. However, Dongfang Wenjian was much more honest. He took the elixir and began to thank June Moxie profusely, beaming with joy. Naturally, June Moxie did not teach him any nonsense, movements and incantations. From this, it could be seen that it was better to be honest. I'll let you embarrass me again. Although you're my uncle, I won't spare you when it's time to punish you. June Moxie was proud of himself. He shrugged his shoulders and laughed silently. Later, he held his stomach and slapped his thighs, laughing wildly. Bang! A chicken bone flew over and hit his head. June Moxie looked up in shock and saw Dongfang. The old lady's face was red. She looked at him fiercely and scolded, "Little bastard. What are you laughing at?" "Well, nothing." June Moxie touched his head and sat down with a grin. Madame Dowager looked at him gloomily. Suddenly, she spat out the mouthful of wine in her mouth and coughed. Her face was flushed, and she scolded angrily and helplessly, "You're too mischievous." It turned out that the old lady heard it. Actually, there were only two people who heard it, Mei Shuiyan and the old lady. These two people were the most powerful. However, Mei Shuiyan was a virgin after all, so she didn't know what it meant. On the other hand, the old lady was an experienced person. Cough, cough. Cough, cough. June Moxie touched his head and giggled. He quickly lowered his head to eat and drink. He looked very well behaved. "Mother, what's wrong?" Dongfang Wenxin looked at her mother blankly. She was sitting next to him just now and almost got spat out. "You're such a naughty son. But you have to teach him a lesson. When you go back, watch him closely. This kid is too naughty. When it's time to beat him up, don't be soft-hearted. Just hit him hard. This kid can take it." The old lady calmed down, but she was still angry. She heard it. But that thing. She couldn't remind him. How could she, as his mother, remind him about this kind of thing? This grandson of hers was really too mischievous. Mo Xia is so well behaved. How could he not listen to me? Dongfang Wenxian furrowed her brows and said with heartache, "I don't want to hit a child. I remember when he was a naughty child, I gave him a tight slap on his butt, and I even cried for a few days." The old lady rolled her eyes. She couldn't do anything about it. This matter lasted until a long time later. One day, Dongfang Wenjian saw his elder brother twisting his waist in the garden. He didn't know what he was doing, so he walked up and asked, "Elder brother, what are you doing?"
Chapter 610. Ahem, there are already 5 pregnant. Big brother, I heard that you have quite a lot. Mother has been very happy recently. Mo Xia's medicine is really effective. Dongfang Wenjian touched his nose. He was a little embarrassed, but his tone was full of excitement. That's right, I already have 7 little fellows on my side that are about to be born. Huh, Dongfang Wenqing laughed proudly inside. That brat Mo Xia, his method is really good, but it's a little too tiring. Although the women aren't heavy, they're still over 100 jin ah. Half an hour ah, and I still have to keep chanting the incantations. It's really tiring ah. It's not like I'm the only one. So many women. But it's still worth it. Dongfang Wenqing twisted his waist and spun his buttocks in circles. His eyes were filled with envy as he looked at Dongfang Wenjian. "Second bro, you're a few years younger than me. You're so useful, your waist doesn't even ache, right? Tiring? Heavy? Incantation?" Dongfang Wenjian asked curiously, "Big brother, what are you talking about?" Dongfang Wenqing looked at him and said casually, "It's the secret method of making babies that Mo Xia mentioned. #%, %%, yen %yen%. Dongfang Wenjian was speechless. What else can I do? Won't I be fine after taking the medicine? What? Dongfang Wenqing immediately stopped moving, and froze on the spot like a mummy. He slowly turned his head, and suddenly grabbed Dongfang Wenjian's collar. He gnashed his teeth, glared at him, and roared, "Second brother, what did you say? What did you say just now?" Dongfang Wenjian was startled, and his whole body was lifted off the ground. He rolled his eyes in fear and said, I didn't say anything, you said it." Dongfang Wenqing was about to explode, and she roared loudly, "Say it again." Say what? You're still pretending to be confused. You damned bastard. You better tell me now. What did Mo Xie tell you back then? Dongfang Wenqing lowered his voice and spat out word by word through gritted teeth, "No. There's no other way. He just gave me a few pills. I'll take one a day and forbid sexual intercourse for half a month. After half a month, I'll be completely fine." Dongfang Wenjian cried out as if he had been wronged. His two legs kicked wildly in the air. "Big brother, quickly put me down, cough cough cough. I'm about to suffocate to death, puff." Dongfang Wenjian fell heavily on the ground. He rolled and crawled a few feet away. When he turned around, he saw that his eldest brother was still in the same position as before. He was standing there motionlessly, like a bronze statue. Big brother, are you, alright?" Dongfang Wenjian asked cautiously. Scram! Dongfang Wenqing let out a long and drawn-out roar, causing the mountains and valleys to reverberate.
Dongfang Wenjian fled. After a long, long time, following this hysterical roar, a series of banging sounds could be heard, as if someone was madly smashing and smashing. It was only until the next day that everyone realized that the entire garden had been completely destroyed. Not to mention the flowers, trees, and rockery, there wasn't even a single piece of grass left. At this time, old Madam was counting on her fingers in her room. In a few more months, she would be able to add more than 10 children. The Dongfang family would finally not have to worry about a lack of successors, boundless gratification. Hearing her eldest son's roar coming from the direction of the garden, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. "How did I give birth to such a foolish son? It took me so long to realize. My son is really slow. Sigh, those maids are really slow. Is it so tiring to make a few sets of baby clothes?" The more he thought about it, the more he smiled. He muttered to himself, "This is great. The population has flourished all of a sudden. It's all thanks to Mo Xie." And, on the second morning, Jun Moxie left the Dongfang family with Mei Shuyan and his mother, Dongfang Wenqing, on their way back. Next, Jun Moxie needed to consider how to deal with the Silver Blizzard City. Only now did he realize that the pugilistic world was in an uproar. No matter where he went, it was like a pot of boiling water. On the way back, Jun Moxie and Mei Shuyan unexpectedly discovered that there were too many people from the 3 Holy Lands. The number seemed to be much more than the 90 people from the previous time. It seemed like the revenge of the 3 Holy Lands had already begun. Not only did they want to deal with Mei Shuyan, but they also wanted to deal with Chu Chihuan. On the way back, Chu Chihuan's glorious achievements were being discussed everywhere. Praises of the supreme assassin were being sung everywhere. The pugilistic world was bustling with activity. The heroic deeds and glorious image of the supreme assassin, Chu Chihuan, had already become a household name. Every day that passed, as long as there was no news that the 3 Holy Lands had successfully killed Chu Chihuan, the whole pugilistic world would continue to be in awe of him. Today, Chu Chihuan could be said to be the first idol of the Xian continent in many years. The prestige of his name was simply earth-shattering. Like the first clap of thunder in spring, it rolled over endlessly, shaking the heavens, shaking the earth, and the vast sky. Especially when it was made into a folk song that was sung everywhere, lasting for a long time. Be Chu Chihuan, your name shakes the world, incomparably peerless. Look down on who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him. the supreme assassin. These were the first 4 lines that were sung.
But later on, some busybodies added another 4 lines: kill the mortal world, kill the holy lands, kill the thieves, kill the supreme assassin, escape the world, kill the supreme assassin, kill them all under the sword. Jun Mo Xia was in the middle of eating when he heard this limerick. Suddenly, he spat out a small piece of deep-fried biscuit that he had just chewed. Then, he rubbed his stomach and laughed like he was about to die. Dongfang Wen Xian raised her eyebrows. This young man from an aristocratic family was so lacking in etiquette. She was about to reprimand him, but when she turned to look, she saw that her usually steady and dignified daughter-in-law, Mei Shuyan, was also laughing so hard that she was shaking like a flower. Looking at her, if it wasn't for the fact that she had to maintain a reserved image, she was probably even more exaggerated than Jun Moxie. What's going on? Why are you both laughing so foolishly? Dongfang Wen Xian frowned and looked at the two of them. No. Nothing. Ha ha ha. No ha ha. What? Jun Moxie tried to hold it in. Finally, he couldn't hold it in any longer. His whole body twitched, and he leaned on the table and trembled. The teacups, plates, and teapots on the table also started to tremble, clanking loudly. He was the one directly involved, so how could he not know how Chu Chihuan's illustrious reputation came about? Carrying one black pot after another, and it was the extra-large kind. Carrying the supreme assassin and the holy lands, and it was only one at the beginning. Now, all 3 of them were on his shoulders, and he couldn't even unload them. Carrying such a tragic black pot, it would be strange if he didn't become famous. In order to reduce the chances of attracting attention, the 3 of them disguised themselves a little. After all, Dongfang Wen Xian was with them. They couldn't afford to make any mistakes. It was different from when the 2 of them came. No matter how big the danger was, they could escape at any time. Now that the 3 holy lands were so powerful, they had no choice but to hide. Although Dongfang Wen Xian was already a mother of 3 children, she was already in her 40s. After so many changes, she should have looked haggard. However, she had been in a deep sleep for 10 years. Because of the miraculous little tree, her face was still the same as it was 10 years ago. Her face didn't change much, and she had the elegance of a beautiful middle-aged woman. Only her eyebrows and eyes still had the willfulness of a young girl. Although she couldn't be said to be a peerless beauty, she could be said to be a pretty woman. Especially during this period of time, with her son and daughter-in-law serving her, she was in a good mood. Because of the great hope in her heart, she had become more energetic. If she didn't disguise herself, she would be radiant the moment she came out. How could she still keep a low profile? As for Mei Shuyan, she was an outstanding beauty that was rarely seen in the world. If she were to travel with her original appearance, she would probably be chased by a lot of lascivious men. Although she was not afraid of them, it was still very annoying. Besides, even if he didn't have to guard against anything else, he still had to guard against the people of the 3 holy lands who could appear and kill him at any time. Naturally, he had to be careful. They arrived at a small town that day. Jun Mo Xia and Little White Tiger had also walked this road a few days ago. It could be said that this road was deserted on that day. There weren't any pedestrians. But today, they saw people coming and going. It was very lively, and they almost thought that they had arrived at a different town. It turned out that during this period of time, because of Chu Chihuan's high-profile rise, it caused a lot of changes, causing the people of Jianghu to frequently come and go. Even this small town was no exception. People came and went, it was bustling with activity. They walked out of the town and hurried for a while. The snow was getting heavier. Jun Moxie felt sorry for his mother. He saw a small pub by the road and went in to temporarily avoid the wind and snow. The small pub was located in a remote area. Usually, business was not good. In this cold and snowy weather, business was even worse. But now, in this off-season, when the pub was almost closed, business was booming, and money was coming from all over the world. It could be seen that the appearance of the idol, Chu Chihuan, had directly led to the development of the economy and stimulated consumption. Yes, something like this had not happened in the world of martial arts for thousands of years. When this rumor about Chu Chihuan came out, how could the bored martial artists not pay attention to it? It could be said that the people in the world of martial arts were even more professional than the most professional paparazzi. In such a big snowstorm, the weather was freezing, and the paparazzi did not come out. They asked around and spread the news. There was an endless stream of rumors. All kinds of anecdotes came out. There were different versions of the legend, but the only thing that was similar was the main character, Chu Chihuan. For example, the story of the supreme assassin, Chu Chihuan, and the three holy lands, the inside story of the three holy lands chasing after Chu Chihuan. It was all because of a chicken's butt hair. The three holy lands were furious. The supreme assassin roamed the world. Who was the beautiful old lady crying behind him? Chapter 611. The great idol Chu Chihuan, with his unparalleled influence, had directly or indirectly driven the consumption of all kinds of restaurants, teahouses, hotels, and so on and so forth. From this, it could be seen that the power of an idol was indeed limitless. Since ancient times, no matter if it was on Earth or in another world, it was the same. Jun Moxie had only just sat down, and had not even finished his meal, but he had already heard 3 different versions of the story. Any one of them made him want to burst out laughing. It was almost the end of the year, and the heavy snow had connected the sky and the earth. This small and secluded hotel was now overcrowded. The snow had sealed the mountain, and the people who had come in couldn't get out. They were all sitting around the fire, and new people were coming in one after another, and the most ridiculous thing was that, in the face of such a hot scene, the 2 owners of the hotel, who had been collecting money until their hands were cramping, and they kept the money in their pockets, seemed to be very dissatisfied, and even a little annoyed. They even ignored the money that they were collecting. This abnormal thing made Jun Moxie pay attention to it quickly. Mei Shuiyan's martial arts were extremely high, but her experience in the martial world was shallow. She would not pay much attention to such low-level human relationships. Dongfang Wen Xian was born in a big family, so he did not care much about these things. But Jun Moxie was the king of assassins for 2 generations, and he had a lot of experience in the martial world, so he paid attention to even the smallest things. He felt that this small hotel was really strange. However, in such a snowy weather, this place was an excellent place to stay. Moreover, there was a lot of specious information that was free of charge. Therefore, Jun Moxie decided to stay here for the night. It wouldn't be too late to make a decision tomorrow based on the weather. After all, Dongfang Wen Xian's cultivation was still shallow. Even with the help of Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan, it was still very difficult for them to travel in such bad weather. Staying here for one more day, other than resting and waiting for the right time, he might be able to hear some explosive news. Even if there was nothing, it would be good to hear some interesting legends. The owners of this tavern are 2 first-class experts. Jun Moxie was in deep thought when Mei Shuiyan's voice drilled into his ears. Yes, it is indeed quite brilliant. Besides, there's something strange about this pub. Jun Moxie's eyelids didn't move as he gently held the teacup. Strange? What's weird about it? Mei Shuiyan was a little surprised. She looked left and right and realized that this was only a small pub. There was nothing strange about it. Only the 2 bosses were extremely brilliant, and even the waiters were ordinary people. After all, there were many hidden masters who had seen through the world and lived in seclusion, never getting involved in the affairs of the world. So, it wasn't necessarily strange. How could it be strange? First of all, the location of this pub is very strange. We just left that small town and rushed here. Even though it's less than 100 miles, don't underestimate this distance. 100 miles is only a short while for us, but for an ordinary person, it would take at least a day. Moreover, the small town in front of us has quite a lot of residents. If the pub was open there, from a business point of view, it would definitely make more money. Jun Moxie analyzed in a low voice. So, this is the first strange point. That's right. This place is indeed a little remote. Mei Shuiyan nodded. If we walk further ahead, we will reach a stretch of mountains that stretches for hundreds of miles. There are no signs of human habitation. However, it could also be that the two bosses have seen through the ways of the world, and don't want to come into the world anymore. So, it's possible that they opened a pub in a remote place. I've thought about this before, but I still can't figure it out. Because the second strange thing is that in such a small tavern, in the middle of nowhere, there are two powerful masters as the owners. What's their intention? What's their purpose? Or should I say, what's the benefit? If they really have seen through the ways of the world and want to live in seclusion, why don't they just go deep into the mountains? Why do they have to choose this place? Jun Moxie asked a series of questions. Another strange point is, why are there so many Jianghu people here? The last time we came here, there weren't any customers. We can also see from the expressions of the two old men that this phenomenon has only appeared in the last 2 days. So, they are very impatient. But, they can't do anything about it. If it had been like this for a long time, I'm afraid that these two people would have moved away a long time ago. They didn't do anything about it. I'm afraid that they are afraid of revealing their whereabouts. These two top-notch masters are even recognized by us. So, what are they afraid of? Jun Moxie raised a third question. In summary, these Jianghu people have gathered here, and the people from the three holy lands have also appeared here. I can boldly judge that Chu Chihuan should be hiding in this area. Otherwise, why would these people come here in such terrible weather? As for this news, it should be released by the three holy lands. Jun Moxie frowned. The more he spoke, the clearer his thoughts became. Establishing prestige. In the past 10,000 years, no one had ever dared to go against the three holy lands like this. But Chu Chi-hun did it. Not only did he do it, he even caused a great loss to the three holy lands' battle strength. The three holy lands had to find a way to eliminate this negative influence, and the best way to deal with it was to eliminate Chu Chi-hun in one fell swoop, and it had to be done in front of everyone. So the three holy lands had to first let Chu Chi-hun's reputation rise, and then kill him in front of everyone. This way, they can be wary of Xian, intimidate the world, and re-establish the supreme authority of the three holy lands. This is the main purpose of the three holy lands. Jun Moxie laughed. But, isn't it unnecessary for the three holy lands to do this? Isn't it better for them to kill Chu Chihuan quietly than to mobilize a large number of people? After all, only they know about this matter. Are they afraid that others will spread the news? Mei Shuiyan asked, puzzled. You've overlooked the most important problem. At the very least, there are two people who know about this. If the three holy lands keep concealing it, the moment we expose it, the three holy lands will be in an even more passive position. As the saying goes, it's better to let them announce it to the world. It's more proactive. As long as they can eliminate Chu Chihuan in front of everyone, all the negative influence will vanish like smoke. Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows and said somewhat mockingly, the three holy lands are gauging the heart of a gentleman with their own mean measure this time. Are you a gentleman? Mei Shuiyan rolled her eyes at him and snorted. If the three holy lands don't do this, then you'll be the one doing this, right? Jun Moxie rubbed his nose and laughed. It must be said that ever since Mei Shuiyan got together with Jun Moxie, she could be said to have a deep understanding of this fellow's bad taste. Just like what she said, if the three holy lands really made a stupid move and tried their best to cover it up, then Jun Dashao would definitely make a move and use Chu Chihuan to stir up a storm. But at that time, the right to speak would all be in Jun Dashao's hands, so Jun Moxie obviously expressed his anger and strong dissatisfaction with this beautiful response from the three holy lands. They actually dared to mess up this young master's follow-up plan. This pub was really not big. There were a total of 6 or 7 tables, and at this time, they were already full. Jun Moxie, Mei Shuiyan, and Dongfang Wen Xian were sitting at the innermost table. From here, they could see everything at a glance. However, this good seat was actually bought by June Moxie with money. This seat was originally occupied by 5 people. June Moxie did not say much. He just walked over and took out 5 silver notes and placed them on the table. Then, he grabbed the machete of one of the men and poked a hole in the thickest part of the blade with his finger. Then, Jun Dashao pointed his finger at the silver notes and pointed it outwards. Then, he pointed at the hole on the machete and pointed it downwards. From the beginning to the end, there was not a single word of conversation. The 5 fierce-looking men obediently kept the silver notes and left. Moreover, they were extremely attentive and even cleaned up the table quietly. They did not even call the waiter to clean up the table. This behavior made Dongfang Wen Xian wring her neck and scolding the nouveau riche. However, after doing this, the effect could be said to be extraordinarily good. After witnessing this strange scene, the other guests at the other tables acted as if they did not see it. They continued to talk loudly, but their expressions were obviously much more restrained. Moreover, they would rather squeeze 10 people at a small table than sit together with this nouveau riche young man. Everyone understood that their necks were definitely not as hard as that machete. In this cold weather, if there was really a hole in their necks, it would be really terrible. After that, the complacent Jun Dashao said proudly, "This is the reality of this world. Having money and power is great. Although I don't have power now, I have money and fists. In this place, having fists is equivalent to having power. Moreover, it is the power of life and death. Girl, learn a little. This is a big knowledge." Such complacent words made Dongfang Wen Xian very dissatisfied. It also made Mei Shuiyan roll her eyes. However, the 2 of them could not refute it. On the other side, at a table a little further away, someone was talking loudly. It is said that Chu Chihuan suddenly let out a long roar. He jumped up and appeared in Hermitage in a heroic manner. He brazenly rushed in and started to fight fiercely. As he attacked fiercely, he continuously roared, "Give me back my wife." Jun Moxie held his teacup and listened with great interest. He commented seriously, "This Chu Chihuan is really brave. He actually directly attacked Hermitage. He is so domineering, so courageous." Mei Shuiyan giggled and shook her body. The 2 bosses who were lying on the counter and taking a nap also raised their heads sleepily. One of them moved his lips as if he said something. The other nodded in agreement, then lowered his head and continued to take a nap. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan heard clearly that the old man said the word idiot. They did not know whether he was scolding Jun Moxie or the big men at the table. Chapter 6:12. Dongfang Wen Xian had heard a lot about Chu Chihuan along the way. This Chu Chihuan had been famous for more than 60 years, and he was the only top-notch assassin who could compete with the Dongfang family alone. He was already famous, and now he had become even more famous. However, Wen Xian didn't find anything funny about what these people said. How could such a hot-blooded story become a joke? Yet, his son and daughter-in-law were overjoyed when they heard it. This was too strange. Ever since they entered a place with people, Dongfang Wen Xian didn't call Jun Moxie by his name anymore. Instead, she called him by his nickname, Sanair. Firstly, it wouldn't expose his identity, and secondly, it was more intimate. "Mother, there are too many people here, so it's not convenient for me to explain it to you. I'll tell you in detail when we're on the road. When you understand the cause and effect, you'll be happy too." Jun Moxie laughed. Right at this moment, something strange happened. The cotton curtain that was blocking the entrance of the tavern suddenly flew up, and countless snowflakes flew into the tavern along with the strong wind. Some of the hot-tempered customers wanted to curse, but they sat down with a face full of fear. In the white snow, a purple light flashed, and 3 people in purple robes entered the tavern like ghosts. It was snowing heavily outside, but when these 3 people walked in, they were clean. Even their shoes didn't have a single snowflake or mud. They were so clean that it was as if they had just come out from a bath. They looked refreshed. They were wearing the iconic purple robes. They were from the illusory blood sea. After the three of them came in, they looked around, sizing up everyone's face and body. Wherever their eyes landed, the people in that direction would feel as if they had been stripped naked in a world of ice and snow. It was a bone-chilling cold. After looking around, they walked a few steps in and stood beside the big fire basin. Only then did they notice that there were no empty tables. One of them frowned and slapped the table closest to him. Then, he stretched out a finger and pointed outside the door. The meaning was clear: get out. There were a total of 5 people at this table. They were the 5 burly men that June Moxie had sent away. Who would have thought that they would be chased away again after moving here? It could be said that this was an unlucky year. However, the 5 of them were very straightforward and efficient. They cleaned up the table like a whirlwind, bowed, and left dejectedly, disappearing into the wind and snow that filled the sky. The 3 human kings of the illusory blood sea had ugly expressions on their faces. Who would dare to provoke them at this time? Wasn't that courting death? Looking around the world, how many Chu Chihuans are there? No matter how many there are, we are definitely not him. Losing face was a given, but it was definitely better than losing his life. The tavern instantly quietened down. The people who had been talking about the 3 holy lands and Chu Chihuan had now lowered their heads and started to eat and drink. However, they did not even dare to make a sound as they chewed. They were as obedient as a 3rd grader who had seen their class teacher: wine. Vegetables. Pick a good one and serve it quickly. A purple-robed man sat down with a gloomy face. The 2 old men at the counter raised their heads and looked at each other. Then, they bent down at the same time and sighed. The waiter quickly served the dishes and wine. The 3 purple-robed men started to eat and drink quietly. His demeanor was not very arrogant, but there was a kind of indifference in his bones. The hotel, which had been bustling with activity just a moment ago, became dead silent in an instant. Everyone was as quiet as cicadas in winter. Chu Chihuan had slapped the faces of the 3 holy lands. These people were obviously very angry. Whoever met them would be unlucky. No one wanted to be the unlucky one. We don't have Chu Chihuan's strength, and we don't have Chu Chihuan's guts. The illusory ocean of blood is truly awe-inspiring. Jun Mo Xia laughed mischievously. Mei Shuiyan gave him a warning look, indicating that he should not cause trouble. Now was not a good time to cause trouble. It seems that Chu Chihuan is nearby. Jun Moxie said quietly. Mei Shuiyan did not say anything. She said, if we meet him, should we help him? In the end, it is us. Jun Moxie smiled noncommittally and did not say anything. It was very quiet. It was so quiet that one could hear the sound of snow falling from the vast land outside the door. The northern wind whistled as it drew nearer and nearer. Then, it disappeared in an instant. This small tavern that was filled with people was as quiet as a ghost town. Pa, pa, pa. Outside, a few loud and clear sounds could be heard, as if thin bamboo poles were knocking on the hard ice. As they got closer, the exceptionally heavy footsteps, as well as the rather hurried breathing, could be heard clearly. The sound was getting closer and closer. Finally, it came to the door. The door curtain was lifted, and a walking stick was the first to come in. It hit the ground hard and coughed. A person covered in snow moved in with difficulty. It was only when he came in that everyone realized that this person had a wooden stick in his armpit. One of his legs was limp. The person who came was a cripple. His face was full of wrinkles, and his head was wrapped with a thick white cloth. There seemed to be some blood stains faintly visible. The thick white cloth even covered one of his eyes. It seemed that he was blind in one eye. The one eye that was exposed was full of pain. He was carrying a long and narrow bag on his back. This person looked so miserable. Could it be that he was a Xian cultivator? Otherwise, how could he travel in such terrible weather? With great difficulty, the man dragged himself in. Everybody stared at him. He coughed violently, shook himself, and snowflakes fell on the soles of his feet. Bits of ice stuck to his body. Even the few strands of hair that peeped out from the cleft of his hat were frozen into strips of ice. "Give me a pot of wine, 10 steamed buns, and a plate of beef." This person was so cold that he was shivering. Even his teeth were chattering. He tremblingly took out a few pieces of silver from his bosom. As soon as he opened his mouth, everyone frowned. His voice was as unpleasant as a duck that had not drunk water for 7 or 8 days and had its neck choked by someone. Then, he looked left and right. He couldn't find an empty seat. He didn't seem to have the means of June Dachau or the illusionary Blood Sea. They couldn't make the other guests give up their seats for him. However, he had other plans. He sat in front of the brazier and gasped for air. He rubbed his hands and greeted everyone in embarrassment. "Hey, the weather is really cold." The 3 people from the illusory Blood Sea had been watching him since he came in. They sized him up for a long time. Then, one of them with a square face and big ears suddenly smiled. He arrogantly and gently said, "Friend, where did you come from? How did you end up in such a sorry state?" "Ah, sir, thank you for asking. Alas, I think it's an unlucky year. I didn't expect to meet a robber in such a snowy weather." The lame man wanted to cry but had no tears. The cripple wanted to cry but had no tears as he said, "This lowly one has been working hard for a whole year and finally earned a few hundred taels of silver. I wanted to go home to celebrate the new year. Who would have thought that I would be robbed when I reached Rooster Mountain? Everything I had on me was robbed, even the fur coats I bought for my wife and children were also robbed. Of the few hundred taels of silver, I was only left with less than 3 taels of silver in my coat pocket. What's worse is that this lowly one only said a few words to beg for mercy, but that thief actually broke one of my legs and crippled one of my legs. I know that it's hard to walk in this world, and I don't know if I can go home with this crippled life. That's too much." The purple-robed man sighed and said sympathetically, "It's almost the end of the new year. The outlaws are getting more and more arrogant. They all want to have a good new year. However, those who were robbed by him also want to have a good new year. Who doesn't want to have a happy reunion with his wife and son?" "That's right." The lame man patted his thigh. He was in so much pain that he gasped for air. He squinted his eyes and said, "Those people are really heartless." What did the person who robbed you look like?" The purple-robed man asked with concern. "Tell us so that we can be prepared." "I didn't see what that person looked like. He was all white. He looked like a snowman who suddenly came to life. I became like this after a few bangs. I just begged for mercy, but that person broke my leg. I didn't see what the thief looked like until I woke up. Even if I wanted to report it to the authorities, I couldn't tell them clearly." While saying that, the lame man started to cry. The purple-robed man said kindly, "However, it's always good to keep your life. It's better than being robbed and killed. It's a great fortune in misfortune. Don't you think so, my friend?" The lame man looked stunned. After a long time, he sighed deeply. At this time, the liquor and steamed beef he ordered were served. He took a sip of the warm liquor and suddenly lowered his head sadly. His shoulders were shaking, and the robe on his back was twitching. He seemed to be crying. Dongfang Wen Xian sighed and said in a low voice, "Crippled in one leg, knowing that it's hard to walk in the world, how pitiful. San Er, such a pitiful person, if you can help him, just do it. You are quite rich, you have the money to buy a table, how can you lack the capital to help others?" Jun Imo Xia had been quietly sizing up the lame man the whole time. Hearing this, he chuckled and lowered his voice, "Mother, you're wrong. Don't worry, this lame man isn't pitiful at all. In this world, there are many people more pitiful than him." Then, he smiled meaningfully and said, "Mother, you should continue to watch. There may be a lot of people here who deserve to be pitied, but they are definitely not some cripple who knows that it is hard to walk in the world with a crippled leg. I wonder who will not be able to walk in the world tomorrow morning. Mei Shuyan smiled and said, Mother, Xia is right this time. Didn't you see that the three superior supremes from the illusory blood sea only glanced at them when they entered the restaurant? But why would he interrogate this cripple in such a pleasant manner? They are masters who have transcended the mortal world. Why do they care about a lame man? Dongfang Wenxin was stunned. She said doubtfully, Is there something wrong with that lame man? Jun Moxie and Mei Shuyan laughed at the same time. There is something wrong with him. Mei Shuyan and Jun Xia both had extremely strong spiritual senses, and they had already sensed that there was something wrong with that cripple. Ever since he came in, the two of them had already noticed it. Jun Xia's mouth even curled into a sinister smile as he quietly drank his tea. Although they were not 100% sure, they guessed that this lame man was most likely the supreme killer Chu Chihuan. Chapter 613. The three men from the illusory ocean of blood also sensed that there was something wrong with the cripple. But after a round of questioning, they found nothing. Although they were the strongest in the world, they lacked Jun Moxie's superhuman senses, and were far from Mei Shuyan's level. So, they slowly let down their guard. How strong are those two bosses? Why can't I see it? Are they stronger than me? Mei Shuyan transmitted her voice to Jun Moxie. Jun Xia scratched his head and said, These two people might be formidable, but they aren't that strong. They probably aren't as strong as you. But, they are definitely stronger than me. The reason why you can't see through their strength is because they have a special technique that allows them to perfectly conceal their aura, and not even the slightest bit of it is exposed. However, these two people are obviously not from the three holy lands. If something unforeseen happens here, I believe that the biggest variable will be these two old men. Jun Moxie didn't know that while they were talking, the two old men were also secretly transmitting their voices to each other. Who are the young man and woman inside? Any one of them is very dangerous. The other man said, Yes, if something happens here, I believe these two young men will be the biggest variable. But, where did these two outstanding young men come from? This is a tough question for an old man like me. The people from the illusory ocean of blood don't seem to have noticed. That cripple is not simple. Don't worry about these things. As long as they don't provoke us, they can fight as much as they want. It's none of our business. Don't bother with other people's business. The two old men continued to lie on the counter, pretending to sleep. The people from the illusory ocean of blood are here. If that cripple is really Chu Chihuan, why is he here? Isn't this like sending a lamb to the tiger's mouth? One had to know that those were three superior supreme masters. Although Chu Chihuan is strong, it's not wise for him to fight one against three. Mei Shuyan frowned. It's not a hypothesis, it's a certainty. If this cripple wasn't Chu Chihuan, I would eat this plate whole. Although none of you can sense it, I can clearly sense the bloodthirst that is ingrained in his bones. Hitman Jun smiled coldly and slowly said, I'm not surprised that he's here. In fact, he's here for those three people from the illusory ocean of blood. It seemed that this king of assassins was finally anxious from being hunted down. This time, it's just a simple revenge operation. Not bad, not bad. That's how it should be. Mei Shuyan nodded in agreement. But, I really can't figure out how he is going to defeat three superior supreme masters by himself. With Chu Chihuan's strength, it's already quite lucky for him to be able to kill one of them. It's still the same old saying, there are only things that can't be imagined in this world, but there is nothing that can't be done. People like you will never understand the methods of a truly brilliant assassin. Jun Moxie smiled confidently. Since Chu Chihuan dared to come, then these three people will die without a doubt. I just want to see, the three holy lands have already laid out an inescapable net here. After he kills these three people, how will he be able to avoid being seen by others and escape? You must know that Chu Chihuan will have to pay a considerable price to kill these three people. However, this supreme assassin is really courageous. He actually dared to jump out. Mei Shuiyan smiled sweetly. Humph, even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered. Chu Chihuan is being hunted down for no reason at all. How can he not be angry? He's a supreme assassin of his generation, but he's being forced to act like a stray dog. He's been holding his breath for a long time. Jun Moxie said sympathetically. You're the main culprit. You're actually crying crocodile tears here. If Chu Chihuan really has the ability to assassinate a supreme assassin, and he finds out afterwards that the person who framed him is that person, do you think he'll let you go? Even if you have the confidence to deal with him, what about the others? Mei Shuiyan looked at him disdainfully. In order to prevent such a thing from happening, I definitely won't stay out of this world's affairs. Why are you looking at me like that? I didn't say that I'm going to do anything to Chu Chihuan. Let's not talk about anything else. If such an assassin really dies, it'll be a pity. There will be many less wonderful things in this world. What I'm trying to say is that I'll lend him a hand. It'll be a little compensation. I'll let this guy deal with these 3 people from the illusory ocean of blood as soon as possible. At least there will be fewer casualties. I feel that the purple robe of the ocean of blood is an eyesore. Jun Moxie chuckled and suddenly stood up. He shouted unreasonably, that cripple. Fuck. Can't you fucking stop smacking your lips while eating? Listening to your voice, not to mention eating, this young master feels like vomiting. As soon as this sentence came out, a few people in the tavern looked over with disdain. The other party is already in such a miserable state, and you still want to hit him when he's down? The cripple was startled. He raised his head and looked as if he was about to cry. He said hoarsely, I have nothing left. I've lost half of my life. Can't I even decide how I eat? What kind of world is this? Is there still any justice in this world? This sentence could be said to make people cry. Coupled with his extremely miserable appearance, it was enough to make even the most cold-blooded person in the world sigh in pity. Dongfang Wen Xian frowned and looked at her son. Although she was a little confused, she knew that her son was not someone who would hit someone when they were down. Or perhaps, her son had his own reasons. So she didn't say anything to stop him, but just watched coldly from the side. Mei Shuiyan secretly praised. Although Dongfang Wen Xian's cultivation of Xian Qi was not high, his calmness, magnanimity, and wisdom were not something an ordinary person could compare to. She had already prepared to mediate, but who would have thought that Dongfang Wen Xian would not say a word and only ponder, which saved her a lot of trouble. Fuck. It's your own business that you're unlucky. Is your crippled leg or half of your life a reason to discuss this young master? What a joke, what a fucking joke. Jun Moxie's attitude could be said to be getting worse and worse. After changing his appearance, his sallow face was filled with a violent aura. He was like a nouveau riche who came out with a mountain of gold on his back. He took 2 steps forward and kicked the brazier. The firewood that was burning in the brazier jumped out, and sparks flew in all directions. Hurry up and fuck off. Don't annoy this young master here. Fuck, ever since a cripple like you came in, this house has become like a pigsty. How do you expect this young master to eat? How do I eat? Jun Moxie twisted his neck and squinted his eyes. He put one hand on his waist and roared, hurry up and fuck off. If you don't, I'll break your remaining leg and your 3rd leg. You're a fucking dung beetle on the dining table, it's disgusting if you don't eat. Just as Hitman Jun had guessed, this cripple was the supreme assassin, Chu Chihuan. During this period of time, Chu Chihuan had been chased to the ends of the earth, and he had had enough. Damn it, the tiger doesn't show its power and treats me like a sick cat. So what if it's the 3 holy lands? You don't even want to listen to my explanation. Damn it, don't tell me that I'm called the supreme assassin for nothing. Supreme Chu Chihuan, who had been oppressed to the extreme, finally exploded. He also knew that if he continued to be chased like this, only death awaited him. But even if I die, I'll drag a few more down with me. If I kill one, I'll break even. If I kill more, I'll make a profit. Therefore, after being chased to this place, Chu Chihuan finally decided to launch a counterattack. It was an extremely vicious and desperate counterattack. He had seen the three experts from the illusory ocean of blood enter the tavern, so he had followed them in. The fire of vengeance in his heart had already been ignited. But now, Supreme Chu Chihuan was extremely depressed. He had managed to sneak in with great difficulty, and had even avoided the interrogation of those three guys. As long as he waited for those three guys to eat and drink to their heart's content, and when their vigilance was at its lowest, he would have made his move. But out of nowhere, this stupid kid had popped up. He even wants to take care of me while I'm eating. This is really fucked up. For a moment, he stared at the sallow-faced kid in front of him, and didn't react. This kind of bastard kid, I can kill him with one finger on a normal day. But I still have three superior supremes behind me. It's easy for me to kill him, but once I'm exposed, it won't be difficult for those three guys behind me to kill me. For a moment, this wise and resourceful supreme killer actually called out to the heavens in his heart, does the heavens really want to destroy me? At such a critical moment, such a stupid upstart had actually popped up. Do I really want to let go of such a good opportunity? What are you looking at? What are you looking at? Do you think I'm good looking? Is good looking for you to look at? You still want to look at me? Jun Moxie roared fiercely, and reached out to push Chu Chihuan's shoulder, causing him to stagger a few steps back, and almost fall to the ground. But in such an awkward situation, Chu Chihuan suddenly felt inexplicably shocked. The position of this push had pushed him to the position where it was easiest for him to attack. Moreover, the force contained in this push just happened to tilt his body slightly, and even the swing of his arm was at the position where it was easiest for him to grasp the hilt of his sword. Could it be? Fuck. You're actually so fucking strong. Jun Moxie exclaimed in a strange voice, and slapped hard on his face. Chu Chihuan exclaimed, and intentionally or unintentionally took another step back, and his body was already less than 3 steps away from the three purple-robed people's table. One of the purple-robed people frowned, and Leng Leng shouted, enough. And at this delicate moment, Jun Moxie suddenly flew up and kicked Chu Chihuan's belly. Chu Chihuan screamed, and rolled on the ground, and actually got under the table of the three purple-robed people. This position was 10 times more ideal than the most ideal position in Chu Chihuan's plan. And, in the eyes of outsiders, this was completely an accident, a 100% accident. The perfect cooperation of the two kings of assassins from two different worlds was achieved in a situation of pure tacit understanding. Oh no! The two old men behind the counter looked up at the same time, and their faces changed color, and said the same word at the same time. One of the purple-robed people slammed the table, and stood up, and said angrily, bastard. Do you want to die? How dare you be so presumptuous? This sentence was directed at Jun Moxie. Before he could finish his sentence, under the table, an extremely bright and gentle light slowly unfolded, like a dream or illusion. There was a scream, and blood splattered everywhere. A figure with dreamy sharp sword light broke through the dining table, and rose up into the sky. Countless bright lights sprinkled on the heads and throats of the three purple-robed people at the same time. This kick of Jun Moxie directly announced the death sentence of the three masters above Supreme Master. The Autumn Dew Invincible Sword, dreamlike and illusory. Chapter 614. Under the table, blood splattered everywhere. A total of 5 legs were severed at the same time. Only the purple-robed man who had stood up and reprimanded Jun Imo Xia was slightly faster. He hastily dodged, and only one of his legs was severed. The thick smell of blood spread out. It was too sudden. It was too shocking. He didn't know if he knew about what Chu Chi-hun had said about his crippled leg, but these 3 supreme-level experts definitely knew about it. They had experienced it firsthand. Such an unexpected turn of events caught everyone off guard. Even a Supreme Master would be affected by the precise cooperation of the 2 King of Assassins. The other 2 purple-robed men were still sitting there calmly. They even had wine bowls in their hands and were looking at them with interest, as if they were watching a show. They really didn't want to interfere in the competition between these small fries. Who knew that all of a sudden, such a shocking change would befall them? And it was such a cruel change. Instantly disabled. At this moment, they even felt a chill below their knees, and the carefree feeling of their blood gushing out. They didn't even have time to feel the pain. However, Chu Chi-hun's sword light had already descended from the sky. The sword light on the table was hazy and dreamy, and under the table was a sea of blood. The scene at this moment was exactly the place where the three purple-robed men came from, the illusory blood sea. And it was the real illusory blood sea. With two miserable howls, the faces of the two supreme masters who had their legs severed were twisted. They slapped the chairs under them, and half of their bodies flew up in the air to meet Chu Chi-hun's dazzling sword light. The last strike of their lives. Their chests, foreheads, and faces were bleeding profusely. Under Chu Chi-hun's sudden attack, both of their legs had been chopped off, and then their bodies had been pierced by the sword. At this moment, they were completely drenched in blood. At this moment, in order to seek revenge, 2 pillars of blood spurted out from their severed legs. In Jun Moxie's eyes, he was like an Astro Boy with chicken blood tied to his body. The once warm and peaceful tavern had instantly turned into an Azura hell. A large amount of blood sprayed onto the dishes and wine bowls on the tables. Everyone's eyes were wide open. They were so shocked that they couldn't move. Everyone was petrified. The superior supreme expert who had just stood up swayed and his face instantly turned ashen. He roared in anger and a dazzling cold light appeared in his hand, flying towards Chu Chi-hun who was in midair. Chu Chi-hun did not say a word. In midair, the Autumn Dew invincible sword mysteriously appeared and then mysteriously disappeared. His body also seemed to be faintly discernible in the sword light. Occasionally, when he stretched his body, countless afterimages of Chu Chi-hun would appear in the air. Jun Moxie finally understood why this guy had to take the blame every time he made a move, because the way the two of them fought was too similar. The way Chu Chi-hun fought was too similar to the way he used the yin-yang escape to assassinate. Sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right, looking ahead, looking behind, this guy was really a good scapegoat. Jun Moxie watched the show with interest. Puff! Puff! The 2 purple-robed men in the air fell like broken kites. There was a glaring hole in their throats. On Chu Chi-hun's body, there were also a few spots of blood spurting out. But his expression did not change. His long sword flew out from the ethereal, shining brilliance. With a snap, it clashed with the long sword that was stabbing towards him. Slowly, it landed on the table. He stood with the sword in his hand. The Autumn Dew invincible sword drooped down in his hand. A drop of blood dripped into a wine bowl, stirring up waves of ripples. Supreme killer. Chu Chi-hun. Good move, good scheme. After all, the remaining superior supreme only had one leg left. He barely managed to stand up after being hit by the counterattack of the long sword. Gritting his teeth, he looked at Chu Chi-hun as if he was about to eat him alive and asked word by word through gritted teeth. It was as if he was about to go crazy from the hatred in his heart, looking at Chu Chi-hun as if he was going to eat him alive. One of his legs was chopped off at the knee. Even his robe was cut off. Blood was still dripping. But he had already used a secret technique to stop the bleeding. At this moment, he was only standing on one leg, looking at Chu Chi-hun with hatred. Even after suffering such a heavy injury, his expression did not change. Yes. Now that you have lost one leg, do you know how hard it is to walk in the world? Chu Chi-hun's voice had also changed. It became gloomy, like a chilly wind blowing against one's face, bringing with it a cruel killing intent. His eyes were no longer cloudy and became as sharp as a knife. He stared deeply at the remaining superior supreme in front of him. The 3 holy lands are only so. Han Shanzhang, you dare to chase after me. The 3 holy lands will pay the price. You are dead. Dead? Haha, How can a frog at the bottom of a well know how big the Milky Way is? Now that you have been exposed, there is no room for you to hide. It is still unknown who will be the winner. Chu Chihuan, you are just an arrogant person. You think too highly of yourself. Today, I will let you see what a real strong person's means are. If you can reach the peak of the strong just by relying on the ghost-killing technique in the shadows, what is the use of righteousness? Can you resist the evil ways and the demons in your heart? The one who will die is you. Han Shanzhang laughed and his eyes flashed. Although the ghost-killing technique may not be able to reach the peak of the strong, it can kill people like you who claim to have righteousness but only know how to boast. Chu Chihuan's eyes were as sharp as knives. Han Shanzhang, your leg has been cut off by me. Your blood and meridians are all cracked. You can no longer self-destruct. I respect that you are a supreme master, which is also a prominent figure. You, kill yourself. You are no match for me now. Ha, the three of us have the same fate. Since the two of them have gone to the underworld, I have no intention to continue to live. But before I die, I want to know one thing. He suddenly turned his head and looked at Jun Moxie fiercely. Who are you? Why do you cooperate with Chu Chihuan to fight against the three holy lands? Do you know what kind of price you will pay? Who am I? Jun Mo Xia looked at the blood on the ground in shock. Then, he suddenly lost his head out of fear and shouted, "Murder! Murder! Help! It's so scary. No matter who you are. No matter whether you did it on purpose or not, you and your family are dead. Those who make mistakes will always pay the price." Han Shanzhang was so angry that he trembled. He stared at Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao fiercely. Then he suddenly turned around and faced Chu Chihuan with his long sword. He suddenly roared and shouted, "Chu Chihuan, please accompany me for this journey." The biggest enemy in front of him was still Chu Chihuan. As for this young man, even if he was really the subordinate of the Supreme Killer, he was still an ant. As long as he could survive in the end, he would not be able to escape even if he went up to heaven or down to hell. Han Shanzhang's sudden long roar was imbued with his peak level of dark force cultivation. With a boom sound, a big hole appeared in the tavern. The sound waves rolled out and the mountains and valleys began to echo at the same time. The snowflakes that filled the sky were actually bounced back, and none of them could fall through the big hole that was created. Chu Chihuan's eyes turned cold, and the autumn dew invincible sword drew a dreamy color. Lengling said, "The people from the three holy lands are really extraordinary. Just now you were still speaking so passionately, but now you are asking for help. It turns out that superior supreme experts also know how to ask for help. You still have the nerve to say that you will live and die together. It's really an eye-opener for me, an evil person. Do you think you can escape like this?" Before the voice died away, Chu Chihuan's body suddenly made a move, as if he was about to rush over. Han Shanzhang shouted and stabbed with his long sword. But just as he stabbed with his long sword, he suddenly found that the body of Chu Chihuan, who was rushing over with an unstoppable momentum, suddenly disappeared into thin air. The figure that was rushing forward abruptly disappeared. At the same time, an extremely sharp sword wind attacked him from behind. Han Shanzhang was also a top expert in the world. Facing this sudden change, although he was shocked, he did not panic. He roared again and quickly retreated against the sword wind without dodging. His back was filled with the purest dark force, and at the same time, he pushed out with both hands. This was a desperate way to perish together with the enemy. Bang! Chu Chihuan's body flew up from the ground and he spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. This was the only serious injury that Chu Chihuan had suffered in this sniper battle. He took advantage of the momentum and flew out of the snow hole on the roof. With a dreamy hazy sword light, he flashed and disappeared in the sky full of snow. One hit to kill, and then immediately retreated 1,000 miles away. This was the style of the king of assassins. Jun Moxie clearly felt that the moment Chu Chihuan rushed out of the snow hole, his sharp eyes looked deeply at him. That simple glance actually contained many deep meanings. There was some gratitude, some resentment, some suspicion, and even a little bit of amazement. Chu Chi-hun understood very well that the firewood in the brazier spurted out with that kick had blocked his unfavorable position. That push had allowed him to get closer to his target. Then, the backhand slap had given him the most reasonable opportunity to take a step back. That last kick had brought all of the effects of the previous 3 actions to full play. First, it made the opponent underestimate him. Second, it made the opponent look down on him. With these 2 points, when facing a top assassin, he would have lost 90% of his life. But that last kick had turned everything into an accident. That was why Chu Chihuan could succeed in one hit and kill 3 superior supreme martial artists at lightning speed. These 4 simple actions, coupled with the perfect hoodlum actions, had seamlessly formed a fatal trap, advancing step by step. Gradually advancing. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.